6 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. Mike Tomlin preparing Justin Fields for the start versus Denver. Instead of Russell Wilson, said he feels better today than he did over the weekend. Tomlin said that they'll start with the participation, level of participation, quality of participation, and then analyze if he can protect himself and be productive. Then they'll, quote, ponder his inclusion. Two terrible injuries reported yesterday in the NFL, both season ending. We'll start with the Panthers Pro Bowl defensive lineman Derek Brown suffering a season-ending knee injury in Sunday's loss to the Saints. The meniscus injury will require surgery, and that will determine the exact timeline, which is a brutal blow for the Panthers in Week 1. And also the Colts, promising young cornerback Juju Brents headed for injured reserve with a season-ending knee injury. The former second-round pick impressed on the field, but with the early injury, he'll be 100% for 2025. And Titans roster construction notes, the Titans have signed former 49 receiver Tay Martin, who played at Oklahoma State, to the team's practice squad. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Wednesday morning and a brand new day off and running on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. RKW on 104.5 The Zone. And if you are new to this show, Wednesday is the reset day. We put behind the loss of Sunday, looking ahead to Titans and Jets. We will tell you where the Titans have the biggest advantage and biggest disadvantage against the gang green. We've got Brad Hopkins filling in for Ramon Foster this morning. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, present and accounted for. I'm Will Bowling at 615-737-1045 and streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV. Good morning, Brad. Welcome.
What's up, Brad?
Thank you, guys. You guys got a hump in your back?
No,
It's Wednesday.
because I don't know what day it is.
Why don't you know what? Why do you always say this?
Well, during football season, Will, when you work 6 days a week, you forget what day it is.
I'm right there with
you. Yes, that is why. That's the explanation. There's nothing more to it.
Well, we have Rhett Bryan today, so that should tell you it's Wednesday.
Hey.
Coming up
Yes.
at 9 o'clock. Looking forward to that.
Rhett Wednesday. That's
like
what we
talking to
call it.
He's a good dude.
That's right.
Did you enjoy Tucson?
Tucson was blue blazing. You know it.
Yeah, spent
But
2
good
years
thing
there.
for me, Kayla, it's a dry heat.
It did. Well, I actually believe in that stuff because I've lived in both climates. So I can tell you humidity and heat is a lot worse than dry heat. But some would disagree. That's just my thought.
Comparatively speaking, we had training camp at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas.
Is that humid?
No.
Okay.
Houston, Texas, very humid. So while we were going to camp to endure the extreme conditions, right, we were thanking goodness that we were practicing out there versus down there near the bayou.
I wouldn't think those would be two different climates.
It's
so
not that much of a difference, but it is a noticeable difference when you get back to Houston, because Houston's probably one of the most humid cities in the country.
Sure.
And in the middle of July, heading into August, man, it is not comfortable. But yeah, I can say 120 degrees on your thermostat. Is that what it's called in the car? Yeah, your thermostat thing?
Yeah.
It really wasn't as bad as, say, 90 degrees in Houston. I'll take 120 out in the desert than 90 degrees in Houston all day.
It's different.
Well, the heat's been turned up on Will Levis this week. We've talked about it all week, every day, for pretty much every minute we've been on air. Let's jump in. Since you are with us for the first time this week and react to Sunday, how concerned are you about the quarterback?
Well, and we will elaborate more on this discussion about quarterbacks in their first year as the show progresses. But the things that stood out to me most obvious were during passing downs when he needed to maybe move the ball downfield. I thought that there was a conservative effort to balance out the attack, but I did see a lot of games when they were trying to run the football. Now, I will say this. Dan Orlovsky touched on something that really resonated with me, and it was the fact that most offenses nowadays are run from the shotgun. And sometimes that's a disadvantage. And I agree with that because during a normal drop back, whether it's 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, the point isn't already determined where you're going to set up at. You can guess, but you don't really know if it's like a quick pass or if it's something that's deeper that requires you to get further and further away from the offensive line or the line of scrimmage, right? But when you're standing there in the gun or the pistol, those edge rushers already have the angle that they need to get to you because you're not going anywhere. You're not dropping back once you get the shotgun, okay? And this read option stuff, more than likely you're faking the path, faking the handoff, and then maybe looking somewhere else with the ball. But when you drop back, and another thing is the 2-point versus the 3-point stance. That affects Will Levis because it doesn't necessarily show that I'm going to do a passing situation. I could be doing play action from that. But the guys are lower, when their hands are on the line of scrimmage. And they have more power when their hands are on the line of scrimmage. And it breaks things up a little bit. So I'm with them. It's hard to get power standing there on 2 feet. You know what I mean? Versus you getting down in your haunches. And you just firing off the line of scrimmage. So in the run game, that helps, but it also helps in the pass game if you're not in those 3rd and 10, 3rd and obvious situations where you're going to pass it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it certainly does seem like, we talked about it on Monday, that their average down and distance on 3rd downs in the second half was 3rd and 7.5.
Yeah.
So they were in 3rd and 8, and their rookie tackle and their new look offensive line, the Bears just kind of teeing off against them. But what did you see from J.C. Latham, from a new look front 5 that did some good things, had some good things to build on, but ultimately allowed 47% pressure rate on Will Levis's drop back, second most in the NFL?
Well, the one-on-one stuff he can do. He's got definitely the physical tools to be, one of the better left tackles in the league. But when the Bears started doing things like stunning, maybe they were dog blitzing, things like that kind of threw him off. They maybe spread out wide in a 9 technique, which is like 2 or 3 bodies removed from the tackle's left shoulder, right? And then when they were coming down, it's like sometimes they were getting fooled into thinking it was a stunt, and it wasn't a stunt. So I say all that to say, it was those little things that the Bears were working on to confuse a young offensive line, because each one of them took a turn getting beat. And it did affect Will. Whether it was Peter Skoronski getting beat on an inside move, whether it was JC getting beat on the inside, then outside move. It was a really nice move, nice setup, and I get it. Right side, we know. Sure, Dylan Radins was pulling like a mug and trap blocking like a beast, but he was getting his lunch handed to him in pass pro. And NPF took his turns too. So if you think about it, if one of them said, you only gave up one sack or whatever else, well, now you multiply that towards all the guys that gave up sacks. Now, this dude is under duress. So they each took turns screwing up, and they just need to have more consistency in that situation because I'm not going to say per se it was only the quarterback because of obviously the pressure. But when you think about how quarterbacks are super effective in like 7-on-7, why is that? Because there's nobody in their face.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's no pass rush to contend with. So what that says is when given time, what? I can find the good receiver. I can put the ball where it needs to be. That's a luxury all quarterbacks would love to have, right? Just sitting back there with 5-6 seconds to throw. But when you're under duress like that, the clock speeds up, and you're also thinking about those big bodies rushing you. So it was a combination of Will not having the kind of pocket that he would like to be comfortable. Now, that's a luxury, okay? Because that's what the NFL has defenses, right? It's a luxury. We would all love to have that. But there are some lines that are obviously better than others that give their quarterback the most time to be able to do stuff like that. Ours is still a work in progress.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I think everybody, thought just because Bill Callahan was here that poof, in a snap of a finger, this line is going to be one of the more, dependable lines in the league. But when it comes down to it, yeah, you have a really good coach in Bill Callahan, and I think he'll get this line to be a good, maybe great line at some point. But right now, you're just trying to figure out the chemistry between the front there too, because they still are working together for the first time, and it just doesn't happen in just one training camp. And all of them have talked about it, Brad. And also, I know you said Dylan Radins had his own too, but he did grade the highest out of all those offensive linemen. And when he went down in that second half, I think you did notice even more so of a disconnect on that side with Andrew Rupchich coming in. So I feel like too, when you're this new and you're already rotating guys in, that can be an issue. And I'll say this about Will Levis. I don't want to give him a pass, but I also don't want to speak too soon on saying this guy is not the guy, because clearly we had an overreaction Monday. But that's what he has to start to get used to, though. When he does feel the pressure, and sometime if it's going to be too much, he's got to learn to make the right decision. And that's the problem that I have with Will Levis right now, because he has had time to work on that. And those are some of the things he even said he needed to be better with, is when you do feel that pressure, you've got to make the right decisions. And I think that's where people are a little bit 1 foot out on him, because he kind of went backwards in terms of, doing the right thing on that game on Monday night. Because second half, he did feel more of that pressure.
Well, let's just say everybody works in protection, because receivers running the right routes and being open and available for the pass that's supposed to come to them, now protection is not an issue. Peyton Manning was a master of getting that ball out of his hands. 1, 2, 3, out. 1, 2, 3, out.
Yep.
And those guys knew where they were supposed to be, or they weren't ever going to get the ball.
Sure.
So if it might have been some of what the Bears were doing in coverage that made Will get off of his first read and then try and go through a progression, then ultimately, like you said, Kayla, try and make that right decision. But he knows where he wants to go with the ball first, right? And if that first read's gone, that means the coverage teams are doing something really good to take away that first read.
Right.
Now he's got to go to a second. Now you're into 4 or 5 seconds into the play, and you're going to get hit if you don't have the ball out of your hands in like 5 seconds. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
So coverage that the defense is in situation does have an effect on that quarterback's decision making, and also the time that the line needs to give him to make that throw. So it's a balance of all of that. Receivers running the right routes, the offensive line obviously giving him ample protection to do his job, and then, like you said, Will making the right decisions and getting the ball out of his hands accurately. That's all got to play in balance. That's what makes football so cool. Because as an offensive lineman, I'm not throwing the ball.
Yeah.
As a running back, I'm not blocking. Well, not all the time.
Sometimes.
As a defensive lineman, I'm not kicking field goals. Right? So that means that we are all interdependent on one another. And more specifically in the offense that has routes to run, all this other stuff, protection to have, and quarterbacks to make throws. It's a balance of all of that makes them good. And this is, guess what? This is probably the worst they'll look. And the reason why I say that is because it's game one.
Sure.
And the more games that they see, the more consistent they will be, in my opinion. Because you need that game time experience. This is their first time. Live bullets are flying. These guys are eyes wide open trying to figure it out. And they didn't look that clean.
615-737-1045. Here, the number if you want to jump in. Coming up, we're going to look at what the biggest things we learned from week 1 of the NFL season were. We've got an interesting discussion as well coming up at 7:20 on the biggest advantages and disadvantages in Titans-Jets from each side of that game. Sam Monson of the 33rd team at 8:20. Rhett, Bryan at 9 with Inky Johnson at the end of the show. We'll dive into our biggest takeaways from week 1 of the NFL season. Coming up next.
It's Ramon and Kayla here for Window Nation, letting you know if you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years. Also, did you know most of your home's AC, cold AC this summer leaked out of your windows because of your old windows? You have old inefficient windows that are probably costing you hundreds of dollars a year in energy bills. With nicer weather here right now, it's time to replace those old inefficient windows with energy efficient windows from Window Nation.
That's right. And do it before, like Ramon said, the weather gets cold and you kind of hibernate. Do this while you're able to do it now, because Window Nation is truly the home of window experts. They're professional installation teams. They have over 10 years of experience, and they do it right the first time. 96% of windows installed. They require no follow-up service. You can believe us. You can believe there are over 33,000 5-star reviews on Google. And it's great because Window Nation's windows come with a lifetime warranty in case anything did happen. So call our friends at Window Nation today for their buy 2 windows, get 2 free plus no down payment, no interest, and no payments for 24 months deal. You can call them at 866-90Nation or simply go online to windownation.com.
Wednesday morning, kicking off the show. Welcome to the middle of your week here on RKW. Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh. I'm Will Bowling. What is the biggest thing we learned in a defensive, non-quarterback friendly week 1 of the 2024 NFL season, guys?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to some of the results we got. There were some surprises for me personally with, I think, starting with New England. Did not anticipate at all, even when the Bengals always seem to start really slow. I don't think I anticipated that result, just considering we didn't even know what the Patriots were at this point. And it is Jerome Mayo's first year as a head coach. You know, you're going with the backup quarterback right now, Jacoby Brissett. They didn't start their starter. And then also the Saints. I know it was against the Panthers, but putting up that many points on the Panthers, I was like, did not expect a blowout. I thought, the Saints would win, but my goodness, they just plummeted them. So I think there were some mixed results, but overall, if you talk about the quarterbacks and going back to a guy like Drake May, who is not starting right now, it was a little bit of a, subpar performance by these rookie quarterbacks. And I know a lot of them, not all of them are playing. Michael Penix Jr. obviously not playing in Atlanta, Drake May. But of the 3 that we saw in Caleb Williams, which we all saw what he did, and, he's going to get the praise in terms of getting a win, but he did not necessarily do anything to help his team win in that game. Didn't even throw for a touchdown at all. You look at Bo Nix's performance. I think there's some positives to take away from that. They were not able to beat Seattle when it was all said and done. But I think Sean Payton has this guy headed in the right direction. 2 interceptions for him, just 1 rushing touchdown in that loss, 26-20 to the Seahawks. And then Jaden Daniels. They just, I don't think, have enough weapons for him right now in Washington. I think Jaden Daniels could really be a good quarterback when it's all said and done. He also suffered a loss on Sunday, but in that game had 2 rushing touchdowns. Clearly something we're used to him doing is using his legs, but at some point you're hoping they get enough for him in terms of weapons around him to be able to showcase his arm a little bit as well. So not the greatest performance overall for these rookie quarterbacks, but if you look at all of them in terms of those 3, I think they all have potential to get there, but it's going to take a little time. And in this day and age, time is not on your side as a young quarterback.
I would imagine in Chicago they want that quarterback to develop sooner than later, since we already went through the Bryce Young experiment, and him still struggling in Carolina shows there's a lot of development that needs to be had for these young quarterbacks. And time is not a luxury. But if you think about it, the money that these athletes are making, I say these athletes like I wasn't one. I'm not trying to distance myself. The money being different nowadays, the expectancy for them to get into the lineup has sped up exponentially. Mm-hmm. I'm paying you a bunch of money. Boy, you better get your butt in there and throw the rock around. When in essence, what wins is what? Experience. Being able to navigate the pocket, being calm and cool and collected because you've seen this environment before. And usually you have some sort of time to do that. Like, do you remember like when you're in high school and you never were expected as a freshman to play varsity? Because you weren't that experienced, right?
There was maybe like one every 4 years or something.
Let a few years go by, and that kid's now a junior or senior, and he's polished for a high school kid. Mm-hmm. It takes time. But then there's also not putting those young guys in a situation too soon. Okay?
Which some teams decided not to do.
Right.
Exactly right.
J.J. McCarthy, I mean, if you think about some of the guys that are in front of him, it might make sense. Sam Darnold's having kind of a year already.
Well, and JJ's hurt. That's
hurt,
the thing. He's done.
He still wouldn't be starting, in my opinion.
Okay.
He still wouldn't have. Now I do understand he was having kind of a pretty good, whatever.
Training
but
camp,
he wasn't better than Sam Darnold, so he wasn't going to start. And just like the boy in New England, he wasn't going to start. There's just guys that are better than him at this point, and you ride that out. I mean, it may be 50-50, but Kirk Cousins, is he better than Michael Penix Jr.?
Oh, right now, yeah.
Absolutely. But here's a first-round pick, a top 10 pick, that you don't want to see the field any sooner than you have to. That's a luxury Atlanta's having right now. That's probably a smart thing to do. Think about it. What Atlanta's doing right now is probably what most teams would do if they had that luxury. A proven veteran that can get the job done And then when that situation's over, you've got someone that can take over for him because he's been developing him. He's been in that system. He's had ample time to learn it, and now he's comfortable and he's good.
It's like what Green Bay has done.
Right.
They've gotten very lucky.
Yeah, right. With
But-
Aaron Rodgers, they did it with Aaron Rodgers doing Brett. They did it
Favre,
with Jordan
yeah.
Love doing Aaron. So that's their model. Malik Willis will be the starter there soon. And
Oh, jeez.
I was joking. Anyway, but that's not what
Might be next weekend.
I
Might
know.
be.
Yeah. Well, it's
good news for the Titans.
What if they sign Ryan Tannehill?
I mean,
That's been the rumor.
I think anyone who has watched Malik Willis play knows that they need another quarterback.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same situation as the Titans had when they started Malik and said, "Oh crap, we need Josh Dobbs."
Yeah.
So who is Ryan Tannehill the Josh Dobbs in this scenario? Who goes to Green Bay? Probably.
I think he's a starter anyway. Josh Dobbs hasn't proven himself to be a starter.
I think Tannehill is more likely to be the quarterback next Sunday in Nashville than Malik Willis is when Green Bay comes to town.
Nice.
He's not even there yet.
Yeah, right.
I think the challenge, though, Brad, when you look at Atlanta specifically, is just how bad Kirk Cousins was in that game against the Steelers. 226 total yards of offense for Atlanta in this game. They were 2 of 9 on third down. Cousins was not mobile. He was a statue. He was playing at home. And considering how much money he is making as well, that is a really interesting situation to me because you already have the quarterback of the future who is not young. And that's the thing, right? Like Penix comes into the NFL at 25 years old. So I think the murmurs for him to get a chance are louder today in Atlanta than they would be if this was a non-COVID situation and you're bringing in a 21-year-old quarterback, especially when you consider how bad Cousins was.
Yeah. How about these numbers, Will? Tell me what you think. 13 of 21 for 167 yards, a touchdown, and an interception.
Talking about Aaron Rodgers?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This is the 2-time MVP or how many ever time MVP or whatever. So he didn't look necessarily that good. And of course,
He hasn't played football in a long time,
and that's
too,
probably
right?
part of it.
10 days.
Yeah.
That's probably part of it. I dig it.
And neither
Yeah.
is Cousins.
Yeah, I get it. So the other one part of that, which was my discovery this weekend, is that, the NFL in New York are struggling. Daniel
You
Jones,
think?
22 of 42 for 186 yards and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. I wouldn't expect Daniel Jones to have thrown 42 times in that offense, especially with the struggles that he's had. Now, that does lend to having 2 picks, but you didn't have any scores either. So in the Big Apple, where the media market is the largest, man, they are going through it right now because that wasn't even close Monday Night Football, Jets and Niners. Another thing I discovered, Jordan Mason's real. I mean, he's no Christian McCaffrey, don't get me wrong.
The pride of Gallatin, Tennessee.
Tell him
from
about
right
it,
here.
baby. Jordan is for real. His mom was there hugging him, loving on each other, and he knew he was going to go out there and have a game. Ran behind a pretty good offensive line, kept keeping it together, right? But for the most part, that dude finishes runs hard, and nobody wants to get in front of him. So I know that this is CMC's offense in that position, but they're probably going to find ways to get him on the field more.
And I was talking to Will and Ramon about this yesterday. It's such a luxury to play in a Kyle Shanahan system if you're especially a certain type of back. And he fits into that mold just perfectly. That's why Kyle Shanahan has so much success with finding some of these backs and being able to kind of take them to the next level. And that was a perfect example. But give Jordan a lot of credit too, because he had that opportunity, short notice too, at that, and made the most of it. I mean, he was a headliner. So, caps off.
It's interesting how much bad quarterback play there was with veteran guys. And we've touched on most of them between Kirk Cousins, Bryce Young, Daniel Jones finishing the game with 186 yards on 42 passing attempts. And then you throw in whatever in the world Deshaun Watson is at this point in his career. 45 passes for just 169 yards and an offense that racked up only 230 yards. Brad, why do you think there was so much subpar quarterback play in week 1?
It sounds like a simple answer, right? To say offensive line. But when you have a great offensive line, you can do so much. A great offensive line runs the football. Nobody wants to hear anybody say that. It sounds like a boring offense, right? Running the football. But running the football establishes the line of scrimmage and opens up everything else. Because if I'm running the football, they're going to be forced to stick more bodies down in the box. That means less bodies in the secondary, open them up for deep stuff. And if you're giving your quarterback time to let routes develop, there's more chances for those explosive plays to happen. The biggest difference in football itself and it might sound narcissistic coming from an offensive lineman, is offensive line play. Why do FCS schools struggle? Because they don't have big bodies.
Why does Colorado struggle?
Hello, I didn't even need to mention them, but you knew where I was going with it, right?
Uh-huh.
Because that's the difference. In the FCS school, probably the average height and size for an offensive lineman is probably 6'2", maybe 3 bills. Where you're talking about 6'5", 6'7", 300 plus, running like deers. Michigan's got line. Ohio State's got line. Alabama's got line. Tennessee's got line. All the FBS schools, not all of them, but when you've got offensive line play, you've got a luxury there. And that has been the biggest difference. So it's not just the quarterbacks and their decision-making, because you talked about veterans, right, that have been in these systems forever. But what is the biggest difference? It's usually the bodies that are blocking for them up front. You mentioned Dillon going out in the second half and how much worse that offensive line or the offensive line consistency got, right? And we saw Will struggle for that. Because now it does affect his concentration. Because not only am I thinking about where this ball needs to go, I'm thinking about, am I going to get hit in 2 seconds? Do I have time to let this thing develop? That's why you see sometimes like Lamar Jackson, he went over to his offensive line and was telling him, hey, look, y'all got to help me here, man. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest difference, in my opinion, is inconsistency. And where does that come from? It comes from coaching. It comes from coaching. And we're not developing offensive line play in the kind of fashion that would protect these commodities of quarterbacks. We're just not. Consistently, anyway.
Yeah, with Deshaun Watson in particular, I think it's been hard for people to get a read on what he is at this point of his career because he just hasn't stayed healthy in the last couple of seasons. And you saw the Deshaun Watson when he played with Houston, that Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, the guy that did a lot of good things and led his teams to a lot of wins. But he is not necessarily that Deshaun Watson anymore. And I know there's all the off the field stuff. I'm trying to just speak about what he is on the field, but that hasn't been great. And just like we talk about guys like Treylon Burks staying healthy so they can consistently, build on their play. Watson's clearly got to that level already, but because he took a year off of football and then has been hurt for the past years at different times, that is hard for you to continue to build on your play at that point in your career if you aren't out there. And I think he has plenty of weapons to go to when it comes to having guys to make plays for him. I get the defense kind of let them down a little bit in this game. I will say that I expected a little bit more out of this Browns defense. I just think Deshaun Watson isn't the player that he used to be. Will he get wins for this team if he can stay healthy? Sure. But is he going to be the guy that we saw, running all over the place and just making spectacular plays for the Houston Texans, No, I don't think so. I just think he's at that point of his career that he's going to have an injury now and then, and he's just not going to be able to stay on the field. Unfortunately, he's guaranteed all that money. I think the Browns take another hit at quarterback, and they add him to the long list of quarterbacks have not been able to lead them to a Super Bowl.
He hadn't ingratiated himself with the locker room. It's the same problem that Russell had when he went to Denver. It was weird when Deshaun left Houston. Let's just say that, because I know guys on that team, and we've had conversations.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a little more to it. And sometimes that chemistry is affected by how they think about you. And he handcuffed the franchise also.
You can see it on the field. Those guys don't want to.
Sure.
They don't want to fight for him whatsoever.
Exactly.
Sure.
And I don't think ownership will let them go to Jameis Winston yet.
Gosh.
And they need to.
I wish they would.
Trying to get milk out of a tree, huh?
Yeah.
We got to get this guy going. We're going to make sure we exhaust all opportunities to make sure he's as good a player as he can be. And they're struggling.
Yeah. It's interesting with him and with just so many of these guys. That was my biggest takeaway from the season is that if you thought you had a bad quarterback situation going into the season, you were probably right. And the quarterback sweepstakes are going to be really interesting this upcoming offseason. But going back to the note on offensive linemen not being able to start the season and hit the ground running as quickly as they used to be able to, how much of that to you, Brad, is because of systems like Josh Heupel's in college that are so different? Because that's what people that are more NFL centered think a lot of times about the college-specific systems like Hugh Freeze runs at Auburn and like Josh Heupel runs at Tennessee? Or is this more the lack of contact, the lack of physicality that is encouraged and allowed in training camp?
1,000% the latter. 1,000%. We don't have near the time to pour into developing offensive lines like we're supposed to. And you got to find that nice balance, right, of being safe, but also getting to the physical requirements that it takes to play this game. So you're not going to do a bunch of 9-on-7. You're not going to do a bunch of thudding drills in today's game because they'd rather preserve their bodies and that physicality for Sunday, right? But it does have an effect in training camp during the week when you're just not practicing at that level to develop those calluses that allow you to play fast, hard, and loose, you know? So this was the first time that, of course, preseason is preseason. You already have it set in your mind how long you're going to play. You already have it set in your mind when you're going to get in the game if you didn't start. It's just a different situation. But when the regular season starts and the Bears have game planned for you, have watched all those preseason games and developed your tendencies, discovered your tendencies, and are now using them against you, that's going to happen week in and week out. So you have to fix the things that are problematic for you and then develop some new wrinkles for the other side. That's how this thing works. But it's constantly getting better. So I really am going to pause to see what happens next week against New York because we're going to see some consistencies developed. If we see the left side, which is still very young, just giving them that pass, you know, experiencing the issues that we saw them experiencing against the Bears, you got Quinnen Williams coming in.
Yeah,
those kind of dudes, come on, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw what Tavondre and Jeff were doing. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to have that same kind of component working against us, you know, this upcoming weekend. Good thing we're at home. But for the most part, I just think it is, like you just said, Will, the inability for those guys to get used to that popping, that hitting, that, you know, developing those calluses, like I said, that just make you immune to all the stuff that you're trying to, do. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, coming up, speaking of Hugh Freeze in Auburn, there is a quarterback down in the Plains who has maybe exposed the ugly side of changes to college football, but I think this story is absolutely hilarious. I think he handled it pretty well. We'll do that next here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Hey, it's Will Bowling. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance was established in 1926 and is the largest and most comprehensive orthopedic practice in Tennessee. A new school year has started. If you're a high school athlete, you just started the season, you've already got some bumps and bruises, you've already got injuries you need to take care of. Well, I'm here to tell you that Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance provides sports medicine coverage to more high school and college sports teams than any orthopedic group in the state of Tennessee. I recommend these guys, and there are over 100 orthopedic physicians throughout Middle and East Tennessee to take care of all your musculoskeletal needs. TOA.com, TOA.com is where you go to find the location nearest you. And they've got 11 orthopedic urgent care locations with walk-in availability 7 days a week for acute orthopedic injuries that just cannot wait. Direct access to sports medicine and performance, physical therapy, nutrition, whatever you need, Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance will take care of your athlete. Go to their website, TOA.com. That's TOA.com to learn more. Wrapping up the first hour of the show on RKW. Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. We'll preview one of the biggest games of the college football weekend coming up next as Alabama heads up to Madison, Wisconsin. But guys, Alabama's arch rival has a quarterback who is in high demand, and not because he's good, because he is bad. I don't know if you guys saw this yesterday. So he said in an interview that he is getting Venmo requests from people who lost money on Auburn Cal because he played so poorly. If somebody Venmo requested you wanting money back in a bet or because he didn't play well in fantasy football, what would you respond back to them with?
Well, I'd change my Venmo because it's obviously not creative enough where people can find him. I would deny it. Say, not paying you.
I wouldn't even engage the conversation. You honestly think I'm going to send you money?
Yeah.
Because you gambled on my performance?
I do feel like he's just encouraging more people to do this by talking about it publicly.
By the way,
it doesn't matter. I want to see the guy that sends them the money.
Yeah, I know.
y'all are stupid to bet on him too. Sorry.
Who?
Anybody who does their research on Peyton Thorne, nothing against the kid himself and the guy who's Peyton Thorne because he's actually a really cool dude. But his performance over the past 2 years, and if you thought it was just going to get better because they added some weapons for him, I would be gambling your money and putting your money on him.
Is betting the most intriguing thing about sports nowadays?
It is.
For a lot of people, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about it. Is there a real interest in the sport? Is there a real interest in winning and losing? Are you just watching it to see who becomes a champion, or you got money on the game? You know what I mean? So it's a totally difference. I don't necessarily see a bunch of bettors spending the money that would require to go sit in the stands and, make a day of it, because that would probably be counterproductive. If you're trying to make money, there's no sense in going there and spending it to bet, right? So they're probably sitting in the parking lot or at a book or somewhere, a sports book, right, making these bets. But that's their goal. Their goal is to not root for an interest of either team, or it's self-centering to just say, hey, look, I'm going to put some money on this game, give me some props, and see if I can't come out of this with some cash.
And if you do bet if you do bet on your own team, that's rolling the dice. I don't do that. I try not to do that. Travis, however, my husband, who is an Auburn grad, 4th generation Auburn grad, he did do that, and he broke his golden rule, and he got whooped in the butt for that.
So he bet against or bet for Auburn in something?
Points.
Yeah, 21-14 for Cal, a team that through 2 games now has forced 8 turnovers, including the giveaways that Peyton Thorne had in this one. I think one of the most certain things in college football is that Auburn will take its NIL war chest and give it to somebody who plays the position of quarterback next season. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt. They are such an interesting program this year because of the recruiting class that they have already assembled for the class of 2025. A top 5, top 10 recruiting class by all recruiting services. How much of that can you actually keep if you're Hugh Freeze now once you start losing games like this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you mentioned the war chest. That's super important nowadays when you're talking about college football, because we saw how Nico changed how this offense looks almost immediately, right? Mm-hmm. It just shows you that quarterback 1 is a very pivotal position, and if you get it right, you got a chance.
Well, at least at Tennessee, though, you could have a transfer from Virginia Tech that nobody wanted, and you can still run that offense at a college football playoff level. Mm-hmm. I think that's some of the concern about Auburn and Hugh Freeze is that can he run that kind of offense today the way he did 10 years ago when he could beat Nick Saban? But for all the talk about Hugh Freeze beating Nick Saban and all the wins that guy has, you look at his worst losses, there are some doozies on there. I mean, he was losing to Brett Bielema in Arkansas his first time around at Ole Miss. Well, that's true. Within the same month, he's a much better Big Ten coach than he is SEC coach. Within the same month of beating Nick Saban, this is who Hugh Freeze is. He'll get you 9-3, but one of those 3. Have fun.
That 9-3, especially nowadays in the SEC, ain't going to get you nowhere. And I think Hugh Freeze is a bit stubborn in some situations. He can recruit at the high school level, absolutely. Can he get the transfer, portal guys right? That's yet to be seen. And I know you don't have to take a ton of them, but the ones that are very important, i.e. the quarterback, you need to be able to get right at some point. And, sticking with a guy like Peyton Thorne, who's already had opportunities. I mean, he's played 3 years at Michigan State, came here last year, was not good. And then you thought, okay, well, maybe it's just the weapons. To me, I don't really know if I believe fully in Hugh Freeze as a developer yet of players. In the quarterback position, he wants it to be like such a specific thing for his offense, but I don't know if that's beneficial to the player. And we saw it with Malik Willis, heck of an athlete at Liberty, fit that system at the time. But then he also had dreams of going to the NFL. That didn't benefit him once he got here. He's been behind the 8 ball since day one in terms of development of a quarterback in a pro-style offense. So I don't know about Hugh Freeze yet at Auburn. I'm not fully in on that he's going to bring that program back.
It's not his job, though, to develop NFL quarterbacks. It's his job to win football games.
No, but he's got to have the right quarterback if he's going to utilize him that way in his system, which I just don't think Peyton Thorne
he's not the guy to do that.
That guy.
Yeah, but if you do one, then the other one happens. You develop your quarterback and you win football games.
Not always, in my opinion, in this system. I mean, he's never had a legitimate NFL quarterback. You look at Bo Wallace and Chad Morris, and he can develop a great college quarterback, but he can't. That's not his. That's not his MO. That's not why he's paid a lot of money. He's paid a lot of money to win college games, not to, make good NFL players.
But you got to have a good quarterback in today's college game to be able to win.
And the thing about it is, those kids that are playing in your program are there to get to the pros, by and large.
Especially quarterbacks.
So if you're not doing anything to help them do that, then what are you doing?
You're winning college games in a different system. I think the two are unrelated, honestly.
Well, I'll put it this way. He's not near a curmudgeon as, say, a Dabo Sweeney.
Well, he won't even take a transfer.
Yeah, I think Hugh Freeze is a great coach. I think he knows offense. I don't know if he knows it as much on the cutting edge as he used to. However, it's just the stinker that his teams put up once a year, twice a year. That's the biggest concern to me. They're not ready to play against inferior opponents far too often, in my opinion.
When you're bringing in a quarterback, the first thing the quarterback wants to know is how much of an influence I'm going to have in play calling or decision making, stuff like that, right? So I think ultimately he's going to keep finding those guys that cater to his system versus finding a guy that he has to then cater to that specific skill set.
Coming up, we will look on the other side of the state of Alabama because the Crimson Tide are playing, I think, the game of the weekend in college football, regardless of what College Game Day tells you. We'll do that next.
7 o'clock on the dot. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers preparing to start Justin Fields against Denver. Tomlin also had this to say on Russell Wilson. He is feeling better today than he was over the weekend. Says that they'll prioritize and start with his participation, level of participation, and quality of participation, then analyze if he can protect himself and be productive. Then they will ponder his inclusion in the game on Sunday. 2 season-ending injuries reported on yesterday. One with the Panthers. Defensive lineman Derek Brown suffered a season-ending knee injury in Sunday's loss to the Saints. The meniscus injury will require surgery, which will determine his exact timeline. And the Colts' promising young cornerback Juju Brents headed to injured reserve with a season-ending knee injury as well. The former second-round pick has impressed when on the field. With early injury, he'll be 100% for 2025. And with the Titans roster, they have signed former 49ers receiver Tay Martin, who played at Oklahoma State, to the team's practice squad. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
And the show goes on into hour number 2 on this fine Wednesday morning. Welcome in to Ramon, Kayla, and Will, RKW, with Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, I'm Will Bowling. Coming up in 20 minutes, it is our scouting report of Tennessee Titans and New York Jets. A home opener this weekend in Nissan Stadium. We'll give you the biggest advantage and disadvantage the Titans are at in that matchup. Sam Monson of the 33rd team will join us at 8:20, and Rhett Bryan at 9 o'clock today. Guys, this Saturday, the game of the week in college football, the Alabama Crimson Tide traveling to Madison, Wisconsin. It is the first time since 1971 that an SEC team has played Wisconsin in Madison. And Alabama, in name only, had a blowout win over the weekend. It was anything but over Alex Golish and USF, 42-16. What do we make about the early returns in the Kalen DeBoer era at Alabama ahead of this matchup?
Are we really able to get a litmus test on these dudes when you talk about non-con games where you're playing an FCS school or something? Now, this will be a different situation because you have two teams, obviously, that are in really good conferences, and I don't know what Wisconsin's peg is on the Big Ten, but we know where Alabama wants to be. This is a team that's rebuilding, getting past the Nick Saban era and letting Kalen usher in his new era. What is there going to be a different culture? Are there going to be so many things that remind you of the past that it's hard to get past that? I mean, think about that. Nick Saban was the culture in Tuscaloosa, right? And this guy, Kalen DeBoer, no matter his success, no matter him being at Washington and taking them to a championship, not winning it, but still taking them to a championship, that doesn't all of a sudden make things even. So he's got a lot to work with. He's got a lot to try and develop and create in this new era of Alabama football. Now, do I expect them to struggle? Not necessarily, because they still have access to the most talented players in the country, to some degree. But now some of those kids that it was a no-brainer for them when Nick Saban stood in your living room to go to Alabama, they have other options nowadays. So we'll see how this goes. But you know how I say, first off, they picked Alabama to come up there at the wrong time of the year. They need to get up there.
I was going to say, in the cold
November,
times of the year,
exactly.
right?
Excuse this September stuff. It's still kind of balmy up there at this point, you know?
It is interesting, though, when I heard about this was going to be one of the matchups. And again, there are some fun, SEC Big Ten matchups to start the season. I enjoy this type of stuff, but it is different. And when you hear Alabama at Wisconsin, it does kind of turn your head a little. I'm sure, Brad, you being a Big Ten guy, this is a little bit different from, at least the years past. So that is fun in its own right, because I love to see an Alabama team, they kind of represent the SEC of the past 10 years or so. And then you have Wisconsin, who has had its moments in the Big Ten, particularly, they're kind of known for that hard-nosed football, the run game. That's who Wisconsin has always been. Great environment up there, though. I know Washington State went there a couple years ago and played, and what a cool environment. So this will be fun, but I think it will be interesting for Alabama, too, because you're getting out of your comfort zone early on in the season. It's not like you're staying in the South or you're playing some cupcake team. Like, you're going to the Big Ten. I know it's not the most prominent Big Ten program right now, but it does have tradition. And they've got some things that are working for them in terms of, their head coach has obviously done it and had success at Cincinnati before. Their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, has a little bit of experience, and he's going to have a big game if they kind of want to have a chance in this game. If it's my opinion, they've got a guy who is an offensive coordinator there who has developed some really good quarterbacks. Speaking of quarterbacks and development, with their offensive coordinator, and I'm skipping his name right now. I will find it for you. But this is, a quarterback who could maybe get to that level. I don't know if it will happen in game 2. With their new offensive coordinator, kind of helping develop him there. But I think
Phil Longo.
Thank you. Well, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. Phil Longo, again, has had some quarterbacks in the past that he's been able to develop. And I think, though, Alabama will be able to get this win. I like Jalen Milroe's play early on in the season for not having exactly the best offensive line play in front of him. Their offensive line in their last game for Alabama did not look good. And I think they'll be able to fix a little bit of that going up there, knowing, this is a new environment. It's a different type of environment. But Jalen Milroe has taken care of the football early on, and he's been able to, score points as well. So you can't ask for much more early on in a season from a quarterback where I think people were still kind of questioning who Jalen Milroe was. And so far to start the season, he's been pretty consistent. But his own line in this game in particular has to be able to be good.
Yeah, when they made changes in the fourth quarter on that offensive line, it looked way better against USF. They had 70 yards of penalties on Saturday. There was a great meme of Nick Saban just shaking his head on the field as his field was named Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday. But Wilkin Formby is not the guy that is big man on campus in Tuscaloosa this week at right tackle. And they've had to move things around with Caden Proctor getting hurt in warm-ups before Alabama's win over Western Kentucky. But the explosiveness of this offense is something I think will be interesting against a stingy Wisconsin defense. 28 points in the final quarter. Each scoring drive was 4 plays or less for Alabama on Saturday against USF. And that is the name of the game in a Kalen DeBoer offense with Jalen Milroe. Strength of Wisconsin is that offensive line. Jack Nelson and Riley Mahlman, the tackles, Joe Brunner and Joe Huber inside, and then Jake Renfro at center. That is the strength of this team. Wisconsin's chance to make this interesting is to do essentially what the Niners did to the Jets on Monday. Have the ball for like 8 minutes at a time and play keep away from Alabama. I like Alabama against the 16 points they're getting. I think people will become a bit more wary of this team after they were not great against USF. But you look back at last season, too, even under Nick Saban, the USF game was not an indication of how good Alabama was. I mean, they probably should have lost. Not should have lost. They were in a dogfight with Alex Golish's team last year in Tampa that they had no business being in. We are just in that time of the year where you can get anomalies and you can get games that are not indicative of how good a team is. I think the USF game was an example of that for Bama, and I think they win that game much more comfortably without 70 yards of penalties from the offensive line, which will be the focus this week.
Why is that always a thing real quick at Alabama? This penalty thing as of late for Alabama in the past few years especially, and you talked about Nick Saban rolling his eyes. I don't know what it is with that team, and sometimes in big games too, like shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. And you see it to start the season. I know to start the season it's a little more sloppy, but my goodness, you would hope Kalen DeBoer can get this under control too, because that is one thing that has plagued Alabama in the recent years.
Well, I think pre-snap penalties you can control, right? It's just focus, discipline. But anything that happens during a play, I mean, sometimes you get holding when you're trying to spring a guy, or you lining up off sides, or you doing stupid stuff like that. That can be fixed on a regular basis. But if Alabama thinks about the Badgers like you do, Kayla, the 16 points, first off, they won't make that. This will be a way more interesting game than it's supposed to be, because this, in my opinion, will be Wisconsin's Super Bowl. They get one of the top teams in the SEC to come into Madison. They understand that they are the underdog at home. And I know this isn't Bobby Alvarez's Wisconsin Badgers, but they're still, like you said, a tradition program. To me, they're comparable to Auburn in the SEC, because Auburn has a rich history. They do have talented players, just not as consistent as the Alabamas, the Georgias.
Well, let's hope Wisconsin can stop a 4th and 31, and then maybe they can finish the job against Alabama.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying, though. In other words,
a good head coach in Luke Fickell, who's
right.
trying
And I
to
think
get
about
them.
that. He turned around the Cincinnati program, basically put them back on the map, or on the map, however you want to look at it. But for the most part, I think that it's going to be so intense if Alabama goes up there not sleepwalking, but thinks, hey, we're going to go in here and we're going to compete, whatever else. I think the Badgers are thinking, oh, my goodness, we've got the Crimson Tide coming in town, and we need to drop the DDT on them. Let's go.
I think that at the very least, it's going to show you how tough this Alabama team is.
Yep.
I think that's the interesting part of it. I still think Alabama runs away with this. Wisconsin has not looked great to start the season, not overly convincing against Western Michigan in week 1 on that first Friday night of the season, and then North Dakota 27-13. That Alabama team will expose their weaknesses very quickly with the explosiveness of that offense, but it should be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think it could be tight in the beginning, but I think you're right. Well, I think in the end, if Alabama is who we think they are, then I think they're going to do what they did in this last game and kind of at the end pull away.
And I think the reason why they've got penalties is because Alabama backups back in the day are now at Georgia, Texas, and Michigan. Like Kirby and Sark have taken a lot of the kids that Nick Saban was getting to be, stowed away, and then, hey, once you're a redshirt sophomore or junior, once the 5-star JC Lathams of the world are gone, we'll throw you right back in there.
Sure.
Those kids are now at Georgia. And, NIL has evened that playing field a little bit to where one guy goes down, Caden Proctor's hurt, and Alabama's replacement for that guy isn't as good as it used to be when Nick Saban had them at the height of their powers, because those kids are Bulldogs now.
The thing about it is, you just said the strength of their unit is an offensive line. So Jalen Milroe...
Wisconsin says, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe can't throw touchdowns if he's standing next to the Gatorade cooler.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
It'll be interesting. So a good one, early kickoff on Saturday. We'll continue to take a look at some of the top games of the weekend as the show goes on today, including Titans and Jets. Wednesday, the reset day. We move on from a heartbreaking loss in Chicago and look ahead to the Aaron Rodgers-led New York Jets. We'll give you the biggest advantage and disadvantage the Titans have in this matchup coming up next. Hey, it's Will Bowling here from my friends at Lee Company. Put Lee Company on your team and stay ahead of the game with home maintenance, repairs, and more. These guys do it all for you. You hear me talk all the time that Lee Company is all you need. Well, for a low price, too, they're going to take care of you year-round. $12 a month, that's all you got. You could sign up for the Lee Company home maintenance plan and receive 4 visits to your home every year by an experienced technician. Let the Lee Company professionals keep your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electrical systems in tip-top shape. I love this plan because it means you're always staying ahead of whatever is next that Mother Nature can throw at you here in Middle Tennessee as well. Get the best players on your team today. Learn more at leecompany.com or give them a call at 615-567-1000. Again, that's 615-567-1000, online at leecompany.com. That's Lee Company, all you need. Wednesday morning previewing the home opener for your Tennessee Titans this Sunday against the New York Jets. Where do the Titans have the biggest advantage or disadvantage? That's where we focus next on RKW. Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, Will Boulding with you. Or the team that Aaron Rodgers calls the New Jersey Jets earlier this offseason. As you look at this matchup, guys, we get a standalone look at the Jets and their loss to the San Francisco 49ers on Monday. Aaron Rodgers, 13-21, 167, pressured on a quarter of his dropbacks. Offensive line that is brand new, held up decently against a very good San Francisco rush. What is the positive for the Titans in this matchup? Where do they have the biggest advantage?
Well, if let's just do a tail of the tape between offense, defense, passing, and rushing. The Titans are 28th after week 1. The Jets are 31st. In defense, the Jets have a really, really good defense. That's the strength of their team. They're 3rd after week 1. We are 18th after week 1. They are 30th in passing. We're 29th in passing. They're 23rd in rushing. We're 17th in rushing. So our advantage is obviously running the football. And if you think about the explosive plays and how effective the run game was against the Bears, it's obvious. If you put Will Levis in passing situations, there's more opportunity for error, let's just say that, or turnovers. We don't see many running backs or people after they have the ball in their hands put it on the carpet. So they're protecting the ball in that instance. But I just think it's a more manageable game if they were to take advantage of what their strength is, which is running the football. And also, it's going to be hard against the 3rd-ranked defense in the league at this point, right? Because they still have very talented players.
Right.
But you got to establish that first. You know, they don't just run on first down. You know what I mean? Start doing that. At least, you know, give them the appearance that if it's a third manageable situation, you might run that thing right down their throat if you can win those matchups up front.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to key in on. And I do think we didn't see necessarily the real Jets defense in that game just because that 49ers offense was so good. It's almost like they didn't skip a beat from last season. They just walked out on the field and boom, here we go. Here the Niners are picking up from last season without, their star Christian McCaffrey. I look at it as an advantage for the Titans in this game. Honestly, from what I see from the Titans against the Bears, from the defensive front, I kind of think the Titans have an advantage there in this game against this offensive line, who I know they upgraded it, but they upgraded it with older guys. And with the kind of push that Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons and company were able to get to collapse that pocket with Caleb and do the things they did against Caleb. And he's a young quarterback. He can move. Aaron Rodgers is not that guy anymore. And he didn't really have to move a lot in that game. But I feel like they could completely put the pressure on that line and Rodgers and have an advantage in this game just because I don't think Rodgers can be that mobile of a guy anymore. And he didn't impress me incredibly in terms of especially some of those short passes he wasn't very accurate on. I know he can get the ball out quick, but I think they could cause some issue for them.
And I think that's my concern for the Titans defensive line is Rodgers got the ball out 3rd quickest among all quarterbacks in week 1. 2.47 seconds on average. Again, that's a small sample size, but I think the concern for me for the Titans defense, maybe the challenge for me for the Titans defense is as easy as it was to confuse Caleb Williams with the different looks and pressure coming from all sides, it will be infinitely harder to confuse Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to confuse Aaron Rodgers. To me, this is a different game in terms of if you're able to beat the Jets, you're not doing it by mentally overcoming Rodgers. You're doing it by physically overcoming Aaron Rodgers and his inability to escape the pocket and make the same off-platform, off-script throws that he was as a much younger man earlier in his career.
Yeah, but he can hit those tight windows.
That's the thing. Is that if he's got a spot to throw from, and he can get the ball out quickly and has any sort of window, he's going to find somebody.
Yeah. See, his game has evolved to where I don't necessarily need to be physical running the football or showing you that I can at least be balanced. I'm like Steve Young. I think what he does is he's through accuracy, through his connection with his guys, through manipulating the secondary with his eyes, doing a lot of no-look stuff, all that stuff. It's still something that he's very good at and very successful. But what was his name? Mookie Wooden on the F&M Bank chat. He made a terrific point. On that last interception that Will Levis threw, the problem he was having was that he was drifting to his left, right into the path of the rusher that was coming upfield.
He could have stepped up and either thrown from a clean pocket or probably just run for the first down.
But the thing was, he was looking where he was going with the football and just moving that way subconsciously. As he was looking to his left, he found himself drifting to his left until he thought he could get the pass there. And still, even going down, tried to flip it that way, which then caused the pick six. But it was him not navigating the pocket correctly, like you just said, Will, stepping up, allowing those edge rushers to run by you. But then again, if you got dudes that are collapsing the A and B gap, then there's really no place for you to step up, which he was probably anticipating why he was drifting. That's why he was drifting to his left.
And I did mention the short pass. I do want to put some stats on that because he was not accurate, Aaron Rodgers, in terms of at least the intermediate passes that we always kind of just assume he's going to connect. On passes of 10 yards or fewer in that game against the Niners, he completed only 5 of 12 for 46 yards and an interception. So he finished the day with 10.7% completion percentage, below expectation, obviously. That was his worst mark since 2021 in terms of those short passes. So he's accurate, but, can they make him a little bit squirmy to maybe not be as accurate?
I think watching that game, too, the defensive backs had a lot to do with that.
For sure.
Sure.
I mean, shoot, that's why if you have a lockdown corner, man, that's just as good as having a blindside protector. Because
and they got Legarius.
Yeah. You're not going to that side of the field.
Yeah.
Unless you want to give a turnover.
I think looking at this matchup and really diving into it last night, I feel better about this game from the Titans' perspective than I thought I would. Because there is one key the Titans are going to always have to have until Will Levis and Calvin Ridley and this offense from the wide receiver perspective can get on the same page. I think the Titans always have a chance if they can run the football. And it's funny to me because that is what we have said for years about Derrick Henry. Okay, if Derrick Henry can get to 100 yards, there was the magical stat that the Titans were winning 80 to 90% of the time. Well, that changed, obviously, in the last year and a half. Halfway through the 2022 season, that became a different issue. But they're going to be able to run on this Jets defense. And last season, the Jets were number 25 in the NFL, allowing just over 2,000 yards. Last week, you know what Jordan Mason did, the Gallatin High School product. They allowed 6 runs of 10-plus yards. That was the most in the NFL last week, tied with the Indianapolis Colts. The majority of those runs were outside the tackles against the San Francisco 49ers. I think what that gives the Titans the ability to do, the explosive run game allows them to get in rhythm after the first down. And that's something Brian Callahan spoke about when he met with the media on Monday. He said, we just got stuck. When you're going 3 and out over and over and over again, they were 1 for 8 on third downs in the second half. You're not able to get into the deeper part of your script for that drive, of your plan for that drive. I think if they can pop a couple of big runs, then you get more so into the screen game, the quick passing game. You keep the defense honest a little bit. The ability of Tony Pollard to move the chains on the ground for me gives the Titans a chance to win this game because I think they are always going to have a chance if they can run the football the way they're currently constructed right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's been so much attention given to the weapons that were brought in this offseason to help Will Levis be successful through the air that we do discount the run game. And I'm with you 1,000%, Will. I loved what I saw from Tony Pollard. I loved what I saw from Tajee Spears. I love the fact that they can run the football. It might not seem as conventional as what we're used to with Big Henry back there. He could have been better served if there was more under center offense ran, where he can come downhill versus trying to be explosive, standing next to the quarterback on a read option, and he hands it to you. Next thing you know, you got to start from zero. Let that man come downhill running towards the line of scrimmage, and we'll see how many people want to get in front of him. They'll make a business decision in a second, be hit like a speed bump.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what fans think about this then. If we're saying that, this is a team that is going to want to run the football, and I know each game plan is different, but then how much are we really putting hope in Will Levis with all these new weapons that they did go and get, minus the running back, because we already know what they added at that with Tony Pollard. Are we expecting then this to be a different offense anyway? Because we're just like, okay, we feel comfortable with them running the ball, and they're going to do it. Every team needs to run the ball to have success in the NFL. That's not what I'm saying. But are we going to put it too much on Pollard and company this season because we don't trust Will Levis, or they don't trust Will Levis, that we're not going to see what Calvin Ridley was brought here to do? We're not going to see what, DeAndre Hopkins is at this point, as a receiver in the connection. I'm a little interested to see moving forward at some point, when do we kind of say, hey, Will Levis can win this game for us? Well,
as soon as the offensive line can block long enough for him to win it.
So that might be halfway through the season.
I think it's 6 to 8 weeks until this offense. I mean, we talked about it all offseason, that it's going to take 2 months for this offensive line to get in a little bit of a rhythm and working together and figuring out how to be pros under Bill Callahan in the regular season, because they had a lot of weaknesses that were exposed through the pressure of playing a game that now they've got to go back and correct. It's going to take a little bit of time. But I think the two can be the same, same process, right? Like you can be a run-first offense and still have Calvin Ridley averaging 70, 80 yards a game.
Right, that just hasn't been the case yet. And it's one game in. I totally get that. But I'm curious. I'm just wondering myself, at what point will that kind of be more of the conversation where it is a little more balanced?
Well, let's say until the Titans show that running the football is a problem for defenses, you're going to see more Tampa 2 stuff with 2 high safeties. But then when they start running the ball more effectively, then what? Now you got a box safety coming down in to kind of add to the mix, so that way they can have an unblocked guy that makes tackles, right?
Get more cover 1.
And then guess what? When you got that cover 3 or that single high coverage, bam, that's when the big plays happen. But you got to bring them down. You got to bring them down. You got to bring them down.
Mm-hmm.
Then that loosens up everything else. Now you're back with Tampa 2. Now, guess what? Now what are you going to start doing? Running the football again. You see?
Right.
So, first off, the Titans have to fix what was wrong last week, or they're going to be doomed to see it over and over and over again. And Will Bowling, you are 1,000% correct.
I'll take that comparison.
When you're talking about, he's a little taller than you. When you're talking about, the guys gelling together.
Yeah.
It will take the time, because I remember I sucked as a rookie, comparatively speaking, and I started 11 games and played in all of them. Until they thought I was comfortable enough to get in it. But I just remember how different a player I was heading into year 3, then year 5, then year 7.
So it took
11.
you as a rookie a lot longer than maybe some people expect J.C. Latham just to pop into being this.
It's not going to happen. And I was
offensive lineman.
And we're running the run and shoot, bro.
It doesn't help that Joe Alt was incredible week 1 also against Max Crosby and the Raiders.
Sure.
Doesn't help the thought process from Titans fans. I do think, and somebody mentioned this on YouTube in the F&M Big Chat and said, well, the Niners can run like that. They have Trent Williams. I will say, I'm not saying J.C. Latham is Trent Williams in any stretch of the imagination. However, you start week 1 as a young offensive lineman as a better run blocker than you do pass blocker. And when you talk about reasons why this Titans offense could be more run first early in the season, it is easier for J.C. Latham to run block as a rookie in his second game of the season than it is for him to pass block. Ramon has told us that for years, that's the first thing you learn how to do well as an offensive lineman in this league is run block.
Yeah, his PFF grade was in the 80s. That was his highest grade. Was obviously
in terms of run blocking.
Yeah, run blocking specifically for JC.
If I'm 6'6", 6'7", 330 pounds, do you think that my body frame is best designed to come across the line of scrimmage and smack dudes around, or is it to backpedal?
That's right.
And try and be a door in essence? You see, we want to, as offensive linemen, to tee off. We want to intimidate you into quitting. And me backing up, waiting for you to run into me, isn't intimidating. But if I'm firing off the line of scrimmage and I'm hitting you in the chin and getting good movement on you, play after play after play after play, you're going to give up at some point.
Sure.
You're going to start tapping the top of your helmet and ask for that other guy that's on the sideline to come in, because I'm not getting anything done in here.
Where is the Jets' biggest advantage in this game?
Defense. I mean, they've got great defensive players. From Sauce to Quinnen and guys that fly around. And we've got a really good defense too. But you're still going up against a veteran quarterback that does a lot of manipulation with his eyes and is super, super smart. He has as much, if not more, influence on that offense than Nathaniel Hackett. Okay? So that's what they have to contend with. But we have to contend with a very staunch defense that doesn't give up a lot of ground. They did last week, of course, but that's, I don't know, maybe it's the road or a different set of circumstances. Mm-hmm. You get behind in the ball game, guess what goes first? The run game. You're trying to get into some explosive plays through the air to get back into this thing. So you can see where it suffered. But there's a pretty good defense that's coming into town next week, and we've got to make sure that all T's are crossed, all I's are dotted, and that there's an exclamation point at the end of the game.
Yeah, the defense is worrisome, in my opinion, and I know they didn't have the best performance, but I can guarantee you, I heard this story, I can't remember if it was on one of our shows yesterday or if it was one of the national shows, but I heard the story that their longtime beat reporter for the New York Jets was so annoyed with the defensive performance that he called it out and said it was embarrassing. It was. That's not what the Jets expect from their defense, who pretty much has held their team together in the past 2 years of even, they haven't been good because they haven't had quarterback play, but their defense has been good. And, you look at the secondary specifically. I mean, I know he hasn't had got a new deal yet. I'm sure he'll be the highest paid cornerback at some point. I'm a huge fan of Sauce Gardner. I think that's a big advantage in the secondary that they have. It worries me that Will Levis, made bad decisions and kind of gave opportunities in a way to that defense for the Chicago Bears, but that Bears defense was very good. I almost think this defense is better. They didn't look better in week 1. I think they're going to go in that film room and realize we've got to get back to being what we are identity-wise as a defense. I think they're going to come in here mad, and it's not going to be good for this offense that particularly is still trying to figure itself out under the Bryan Callahan era. And Bryan Callahan still trying to figure out his balance of play calling and adjustments. It's really early to face a really veteran defense in a team like New York.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage is that they have Sauce Gardner and we don't.
Sauce.
That's what Bruce Pearl always used to say after games. He'd say, well, today we had Chris Lofton and they didn't. Yeah, they have Sauce Gardner and the Titans don't. That secondary had 15 interceptions last year. Second best passing defense in the league in terms of yardage, which is also something considering how much they had to be on the field because that offense couldn't sustain drives under a just who's who of bad quarterback play last season after Aaron Rodgers 3 minutes of 2023 football. But up front, Jermaine Johnson at edge. Quinnen Williams, of course, a stud, 37 career sacks. Great run defender last season. Javon Kinlaw, who Ren Carthon helped draft in San Francisco, former South Carolina Gamecock. He's on that front seven. Michael Clemens, Will McDonald, the former edge from Iowa State, and former number 3 overall pick Solomon Thomas, who has not lived up to expectations in his career. But the linebackers are veterans as well. And Quincy Williams, C.J. Mosley, Jamie Sherwood, the fourth-year guy out of Auburn. So there are a lot of good players on that defense. But Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed at corner, Sauce Gardner's ability to take away an entire side of the field will challenge Will Levis in a way that he has rarely been challenged at this point of his career. And I'm very interested to see how Bryan Callahan tries to make him comfortable and keep the ball in Titans' hands and not Jets' hands, because they can take it away from you any part of the field with that guy in coverage. He is unbelievably good.
Set up the explosive plays. Get the ball out of your hand fast. They'll take those shots deep when they come down to cover that.
615-737-1045. You can react to any of our Titans-Jets preview or give us your thoughts on the matchup coming up this Sunday. When we come back, though, in college football, there were massive television numbers that came out of Texas and Michigan. However, I think many of you are making a claim about those numbers that is inaccurate. We're going to talk about that next. Wednesday morning as the show goes on here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. And a reminder that we have teamed up with Titans lineman Jeffrey Simmons to help promote his inaugural fundraiser for his nonprofit, Give Him a Reason. That is coming up in 5 days' time. Next Monday, September the 16th at Hall's Chop House here in Nashville. He started Give Him a Reason in 2022, giving something to Nashville's youth he says he didn't have growing up, hoping to inspire them, grow their self-esteem, and give them opportunities they may not otherwise have had through hands-on activities. For individual sponsorships and tickets, email Abigail at william-raymond.com. That's Abigail at william-raymond.com. 615-737-1045. Guys, yesterday, monster television numbers came out from Michigan and Texas on Saturday in the Big House. A 9.35 million person television audience watching this game, the most watched college football game this season on any network, according to Fox, and Saturday's most watched telecast of the day on any network. What is the significance of that, if any, in a new era of college football that this many of us are watching a Week 2 game?
Well, first off, I hadn't seen as many cowboy hats in the Big House ever. And it was actually really cool to see a story program like Texas go all the way up to Michigan to play a game. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a Big Ten SEC matchup. That was a big deal in itself. And that's probably what lent to all the eyeballs on it. When you started looking at the marquee to seeing what matchups were going to be fun to watch, when you see the biggest conferences in college football going head-to-head in a place like the Big House where, like Alabama, they're replacing a great coach, and we'll see what that new culture looks like. And for Texas and Quinn Ewers to come in and lay a whooping, you know what I mean? It was kind of interesting to watch. And then me being a Big Ten fan, of course, I didn't want to see the SEC come in there and do what they did.
I also didn't want to see the SEC go in there and do what they did as an SEC person.
Wow.
But I also wanted the Big Ten to win on Saturday.
But the thing is, I have a lot of reverence for the Big House because that's the only place I never won in.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten.
It sticks with you, doesn't it?
I mean, we used to get boat raced.
Right.
It wasn't even close. You know, they were beating us so bad. Until my senior year, they kicked the field goal to tie us 17-17. That was my consolation right there, not having much success against the Wolverines. So to see, like I said, all those white cowboy hats and, you know, the burnt orange,
the burnt orange,
everywhere.
That's such an ugly color.
It's just
that
so
is
weird.
an awful color.
Anyway.
Let me just repeat that.
Yeah.
That is an awful color. I think it was a lot in part to, look, we're in a new age of college football. And like I talked about Alabama coming up to Wisconsin, it's not something you see usually in the beginning of the season. So for one thing, I think that newness is really intriguing for a lot of people to want to tune in. And with the two biggest conferences being the Big Ten and SEC, that helps too, because that's just naturally more people want to watch those programs within those two conferences. But I also think with this particular matchup in Michigan and Texas is these are two programs that people really want to see, like, where are they at this point of the season to start? Because you've got a team that won the national championship. Are they really still the same Michigan? Could they still be a team that competes for championship this year? Or did they really lose that many that they're not going to be that team? I think that was intriguing. Let's really see what Michigan can do against a team like Texas, where I think everybody's starting to believe that they are finally back to being that Texas program that they were so many years ago when you had Vince Young there. But I think that caused intrigue too, because people are like, okay, is Texas really back? It was almost like a measuring stick for both programs that have seen success recently, or have grown at least as programs and kind of getting back to their traditional ways. So I think that naturally for people was intriguing, because there are still questions at the beginning of the year on who's who. Well, we found out the answer, at least right now, that Texas is much more elevated than Michigan. Michigan really did lose that many pieces.
Well, first off, those tears that we did see from Sharon Moore when he was filling in for Jim Harbaugh, they wanted to see if that would translate into being able to take over the program and make them as relevant as when he was there.
Yeah, I think where people are missing the mark here is the Athletic Stuart Mandel tweeted, "I was told games like this would be meaningless with the new college football playoff." Television numbers are not indicative of meaning to the national championship, in my opinion, because does Michigan really have a chance to win the national championship this year? No. That's where I think the playoff expansion crowd is going to be watching closely over these next 3 seasons. How many times does a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seed actually win the national championship? Because yes, like Tennessee, Oklahoma has more meaning in 2 weeks, but it especially has more meaning if Tennessee making the playoff could actually win the national championship. And I think you could make the argument that Tennessee is on the fringes of legitimate national title contenders for this season. So these are 2 blue blood programs. Texas, good on Sarkisian for playing home and homes.
Yeah.
Because he's now done this 3 years in a row. He's gone to Alabama. He's hosted Alabama. And now he's gone to Michigan. Good on Steve Sarkisian in Texas, not playing these neutral site games like the Mayo Classic or the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Bowl or, the game in Vegas. College football needs less neutral site games. Mm-hmm. And I think this audience reflects that more so than it does anything that has to do with conference expansion or the playoff or anything else. I think people are tired of neutral site games and they want to watch 2 blue blood programs play on campus. And that's exactly what happened on Saturday. I think it's as simple as that.
I like it.
615-737-1045, our number coming up. Aaron Rodgers spoke very strongly about his performance, about the Jets' performance after their loss to the 49ers on Monday. We'll tell you what he said. We'll take a look at how the Titans slow him down in hour 3 next.
What's going on? 801. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers preparing Justin Fields to start against Denver this week. Russell Wilson, quote, feels better today than he did over the weekend. Tomlin says they'll start with his participation, level of participation, quality of participation, and then analyze if he can protect himself and be productive. The reports of 2 season-ending injuries yesterday, one on the Panthers, Pro Bowl defensive lineman Derek Brown suffering a season-ending knee injury in Sunday's loss to the Saints, and also in the Colts defensive back room, promising young cornerback Juju Brents headed to injured reserve with also a season-ending knee injury. But with an early injury, there is hope that both will be at 100% for 2025. And on the Titans roster news, they have signed former 49ers receiver Tay Martin, who played at Oklahoma State, to the team's practice squad. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
And the show goes on into the second half, hour number 3 on this Wednesday morning. RKW, Ramon, Kayla, and Will with Brad Hopkins in for the Big Ragu this morning. He will be back with us tomorrow. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, Will Bowling on the phone lines at 615-737-1045 and streaming live on 1045 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. In 15 minutes, Sam Monson of the 33rd team will stop by. We'll go around the NFL with him, get his concern level as well on Will Levis. Check out Check the Mic on podcast platforms everywhere for him and our good friend Steve Palazzolo. Two of the best talking NFL in our world. Guys, Aaron Rodgers says it is an excuse to say that new pieces playing together for the first time contributed to the New York Jets losing in San Francisco on Monday night. He says, I'm not going to use that. I don't think we should. We expect greatness when we step on the field. There were moments that felt really good, but not sustained. We felt like if we could just get a first down, we would be rolling. That sounds a lot like what the Titans talked about after Sunday's loss in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah. First off, Aaron, like I mentioned earlier, has so much influence on that offense, and there's so much of an expectation for the guys around him to do and be where they're supposed to be. I dig that. But it is something that you have to take in consideration, because there's no way that a unit can look crisp the first time it gets together. And we didn't see a whole bunch of preseason from their starters and stuff like that. So they're, in essence, getting up to speed while week 1 and week 2 and week 3 and week 4 start to progress. So I think it may be considered a relatively slow start for teams like New York, maybe even teams like New York or Tennessee that played 2 different halves. Last week's half was dominant. Second half was not so much in Tennessee. And at least they kept it close enough to where it seemed like they can make some plays on Monday night to get back in that ball game, but ultimately they couldn't slow down Jordan Mason. So it isn't an excuse, because you got to be able to go out there and execute the game plan. I understand that, but I think that this team will get better because they'll be in more situations like that and know how to better handle themselves as more situations come up.
And I think for Aaron Rodgers at this point of his career too, I don't think he's ever going to try to, in the regular season, make excuses for why they lost a game, right? Because he's a veteran quarterback. He expects at least his play, whether or not he played a lot in the preseason or not, or, he took his trip to Egypt or whatever. When it comes to the regular season now and that game 1, he expects this team to be,
right,
the team that everybody has talked about when he came there. And, he's healthy now, and he lasted through 4 snaps, which is great news for him and the New York Jets. But I think he mentioned not being able to sustain drives. That was a major issue for the New York Jets. in that game, and give credit to the 49ers, defense, but also give the offense was able to stay on the field and give this defense a lot of problems. This Jets defense a lot of problems, which we all thought would be a little bit better. They also, in terms of just having possession of the ball in general, they didn't really have a lot of opportunity. They only held the ball for 21 minutes and 20 seconds compared to the 38 minutes and 40 seconds that the Niners were able to sustain offense. So that's also interesting. I also think the run game was not as good as it should have been. We talk about just coming out of the gates, being able to run the ball. Breece Hall, it was okay, but they completely, in terms of dominating the run game, it was the Niners. I mean, they had 68 yards on the ground, the Jets did. So there was a lot of inconsistencies, and it's probably frustrating for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who kind of expects at this point, whether they're working together for the first time in real game action or not, he expects this to be at a different level now.
It's interesting. This Jets team is going to be under a lot of pressure if they lose this game, because I think nationally the perception is, they'll just go down there and get right in Nashville. Mm-hmm. Then they'll be good to go. And not that national perception means much, but I do think with the New York franchises and the different animal that is, they have put together a roster with a quarterback that is Super Bowl or bust. There are not a lot of Super Bowl or bust teams in this league this year. I would put them in that conversation, and I think they will be feeling that pressure. Whether that helps them or hurts them remains to be seen, but I think the nebulous pressure is kind of an abstract thing, right? And I don't like talking about things that I can't put a value on sometimes in football, because I just think it's kind of a cop-out. But I do think it's meaningful for the New York Jets when you consider all of the factors that say this team should be winning and doing it now.
Yeah, because they got a 40-year-old quarterback. Why do you have a 40-year-old quarterback under center? Because he must be pretty good. Mm-hmm. Or he's filling the seat for the guy that you just drafted who's not quite ready. If you think about who the Jets were supposed to be before the Aaron Rodgers trade, no one talked about them in the division. Not at all. But then when Aaron came there, now all of a sudden they're part of the conversation. They're part of one of the teams that Patrick Mahomes has to beat in the AFC. That didn't look like that Jets team that was going to do that this first week against San Francisco. And he's not trying to make any excuses, but the only reason why you employ a guy that is that long in the tooth is because he still has a lot left in the tank, and he must have had success previously, which he has, of course. Mm-hmm. At least helping Green Bay be as well as they were when he was playing there. And they expected that same kind of performance and that same kind of leadership and that same kind of results as what he's had when he was a cheesehead.
And you also have to question the coaching at some point. And if it doesn't go according to plan this year, and I don't know what the expectation, is it playoffs that they have to get to?
Super Bowl.
Is it? Yeah. Then
Super
Saul
Bowl.
is gone. Then Robert Saul is gone, in my opinion. And that, to me, he does not blow the doors off in terms of coaching at all. He's more of a defensive guy, and I get that. He's been able, but you have to have offense in this day and age more than any time before. And even with a good quarterback, I don't know if they're going to be able to reach that pinnacle this year. And so they could be doing a giant reset yet again with the Jets.
Yeah, he's 18-34 as a head coach, Robert Saleh. I mean, at what point do you move on beyond the he hasn't had anything to work with conversation and just accept that the guy's not a good coach? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
He has the Mike Vrabel plight. You're a defensive coach that cannot affect the most important position on your football team. You trust that you're going to hire an offensive coordinator, someone with that genius to put it all together and make him look as good as he can be. Robert Saleh put a lot in Nathaniel Hackett because Aaron Rodgers put a lot in Nathaniel Hackett. Okay?
What does this
so
sound
what
like?
happened when Aaron Rodgers was out? They didn't have much of a contingency, so Zach Wilson and anybody else that they put in that backfield, they struggled handsomely because it wasn't Aaron Rodgers that was back there running he and Nathaniel Hackett's offense.
Oh, they got one now in Tyrod Taylor. That's for sure. They could have used him last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But think about it is, even Aaron said it himself. He needed to get the ball more to Garrett Wilson. They do have some studs that you have
Garrett
to
Wilson,
respect.
yeah, he is
you
a
got to
stud.
respect. But okay,
Mike Williams, yeah.
But how many passes did he throw? 21, 23? Something like that? Something I got it right here.
I was
I believe
going
it was
to say
21.
right.
Yeah, 13 to 21.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not a 21 attempts. I mean, hell, Daniel Jones threw 42 times.
Couldn't sustain drives, right? Right. It's interesting. I do think the Niners defense deserves a lot of credit for the way that game went, but interesting. The one touchdown drive they did have early in that game, 7 minutes, 7 seconds. The touchdown drive the Jets had, longer than any possession they had in all of 2023.
That's wild.
That was a third of their time with the football was on one possession in that game.
When you have a series like that, real quick, when you have a series like that and you put together 10, 11, 12 plays, that drains the defense. Yeah. And if your defense goes out there and gets the ball back to you again to then start another series like that, that's when you take over a ball game, because not only are you showing you have that kind of momentum, but it also slows down the rhythm that the other offense is trying to get into because they're not on the field.
Yeah. Coming up, we'll bring Sam Monson of the 33rd team into the discussion. What is his concern level for Will Levis? And how do you go about stopping this iteration of Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets offense? We'll talk to Sam Monson about that coming up next. It is the greatest time of the year again. Kickoff is here and football is officially back. What's going on? It's Will Bowling here from my friends at Underdog Fantasy. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by competing on Underdog. It's what I'm doing, and it's what you should be doing as well, because it is so easy to use. I'm picking higher on a Tony Pollard touchdown this upcoming weekend. I'm also taking higher on Will Levis's passing yards. I think the Titans offense bounces back this weekend against the New York Jets. And you can play as well on Underdog, and making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple to use mobile app or go to underdogfantasy.com and sign up with promo code WILL. WILL. Underdog is going to give you a free pick to use on your first Cash Champions entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code WILL, WILL, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Wednesday morning continues here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will RKW with Brad Hopkins filling in for Ramon Foster this morning. Alongside Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. Pleased to be joined on the phones today, talking Titans and NFL headlines from the 33rd team, Sam Monson, our good friend, kind enough to give us a few minutes this morning. What's up, Sam? How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How about you?
Good.
We are great. And Sam, let's jump into the biggest topic of conversation here in Nashville. How concerned are you about Will Levis after Sunday's performance in Chicago?
So it's the baseline of Will Levis in that game, I think, was okay. It was just the meltdown plays that were obviously problematic, including that one right at the end, which threw the game away. And you know, Tennessee should have won that game comfortably. It was a couple of games in week one where one team was the better side, had it comfortably in control, should have won going away, and then a couple of big plays swung it back in the opposite direction, and this was one of them. The offensive line I thought was better. It wasn't good. There was still some bad plays in there, particularly the left side had a few plays where they got beaten pretty badly, and that put Levis on the move. But the first half, you watch his tape, and he's reacting to that pressure well, like he's avoiding it. He's finding the place to go with the football. He's looking relatively calm and in control. And then as the game went on, he seemed to sort of spiral out of control, and suddenly when somebody's getting moved in the pocket or when there's pressure coming, now he's like lurching out of the way of that pressure and just looked a lot less in control. Obviously, the pick six was the worst example of that, but earlier in the game, he'd done a very similar thing, tried to kind of throw it away backhanded while falling over. That they just need to figure out how to rein him in. I thought the first half, if that's the Will Levis you're going to get going forward, that we can work with that. That's operating the offense well. That's looking in control. It was just that things started to spiral completely out of control once the negative surfaced.
Sam Monson of the 33rd team, our guest at Sam Monson NFL on Twitter. We've talked a lot, Sam, about the differences in this Brian Callahan system in Tennessee versus what he and Zach Taylor were doing in Cincinnati. What stood out about the way he tried to build a game plan and call plays specifically in that first half?
Yeah, I thought, again, the first half I thought was pretty impressive. I thought Tennessee was looking in good shape. I thought pretty much everything they were doing was moving things in the right direction. It was working. They definitely had the ascendancy in that first half, and then it was just a case of once the punt block happened, really, once that big play swung against them, things started to shift and started to change, and they weren't able to pull themselves out of that. But I thought, generally speaking, they had quick passing working in the first half. The run game looked fine. The offensive line was holding its own. Again, it's not going to be a great unit, but the quest was to get off the bottom of the NFL ladder, right? To get away from being the worst offensive line in the NFL and just have a platform that's able to work from. I think it was able to do that. And when the run game is functioning, that I think is the strength of guys like J.C. Latham right now. He still moves people on contact. The more you can keep him out of those really disadvantageous, third and long situations, the better. But I thought generally the first half of the game, both from a game plan point of view, from an execution point of view, was solid.
Sam Monson of the 33rd team joining us this morning on RKW. Great to have you on, Sam. When you look at the defensive performance by the Titans, I think that's what's so frustrating for Brian Callahan as a first-year head coach, is because it kind of went to waste in a way. How impressed were you with the defense performance, especially up front, and kind of the ability that you were able to see out of T'Vondre Sweat, the rookie?
Yeah, I mean, in my notes I was writing down, like the first half, again, in particular, those Titans defensive backs were just absolutely all over the Bears wide receivers, and we've heard nothing but good things about the Chicago wide receivers all offseason, and what a great job the Bears had done surrounding Caleb Williams. They were getting nowhere because of the aggressive coverage from this Titans back end. And yeah, I thought T'Vondre Sweat was incredibly impressive. This is a guy who's not normal in terms of what he can do. Like, he's 365-pound plus guy, And he doesn't just play, like everyone hears 365 pounds and you think Ted Washington, right? You think this giant nose tackle that can't really move around and is just going to eat up space in the middle of the line. But T'Vondre Sweat is athletic and mobile and dynamic at 365 pounds. The things that he can do is rare, and he doesn't just play nose tackle. Like, they'll move him around the defensive line. It happened at Texas. We saw it in this game with Tennessee as well. They're going to move him around and let him find matchups and exploit different offensive linemen along that line. And honestly, the most important and maybe impressive thing from him is that he played 38 snaps. Again, the big question mark when you're 365 pounds is, okay, that's great, but how many snaps can you last and make an impact at that size? And he played 38 snaps, which is a lot for a guy of that size. So I think T'Vondre Sweat could end up proving to be one of the biggest steals of the draft, because this is somebody that had first-round talent and obviously had, a legal issue surface pre-draft, but also you have that question mark of, are we going to be able to play him enough to get first-round value out of what he can do? But certainly week one said yes to that question.
Sam, is there anything in the Titans' first performance of the season that shocked you a little bit? Because I know fans here, I think there's so much hope because you did push the reset button offensively specifically here. Then you see that first performance, and I think a lot of people are already quick to jump off the Will Levis train. But anything that you saw that you were maybe a little bit disappointed about with this Titans team?
No, I mean, I think overall it was quite encouraging. It's just that it slipped away. I think that was the game was looking like it was going to be Tennessee wins this game. They upset everybody's sort of favorite offseason story in the Chicago Bears, and the Bears are getting all this playoff hype, and they're going to be a big team this year. And then Tennessee was, as I said, the better team for the majority of that game. And then you get a Will Levis meltdown late in the game that contributes to throwing it away. I think overall Levis didn't play terribly. It's just that the wheels completely fell off, and he ends up ultimately costing them the game. So I think it's tough to be optimistic coming out of a game like that, because it's one they could and should have won and then found a way of losing. And that's a bad thing to happen, and a bad mental state to shake yourself out of for week two. But overall, I think they can look at this game and take a lot of positives out of it and say, look, if Chicago is what everybody thought they were, and a playoff-bound football team and a very good side in the NFC, we were the better team in this game and still ended up finding a way to lose it. But being the better team against a side that is supposed to be a playoff contending team, I think is the more important thing for long-term outlook for the Titans.
Formerly of the 33rd team, formerly of PFF, and now from the 33rd team, he is Sam Monson joining us here on the show. And Sam, I wanted to dig into that PFF background that you have in comparing these two quarterbacks. Both of them very young, of course. Will Levis having 10 starts, the veteran in this scenario. But just compare the two from what you saw them dealing with schematically and, of course, how they managed their offenses.
Yeah, so they're in ways they're kind of similar in terms of I think they're going to want to survive making big plays, making off-structure plays, and sort of improvising. Caleb Williams is incredible at that, but at the moment it felt like he wants to do it every single time, and that tape looked a lot like his USC tape in terms of every play he's trying to play hero ball, trying to make the play, trying to make something happen. And at this level, I mean, Bill Belichick has a show now on Underdog and on YouTube, and he was making this point before the regular season started. You just need him at the NFL level to take what's there sometimes and not try and extend everything. That's, I think, what he really needs to work on, is to just rein it in, calm down a little bit, take what's there in the pocket, and then, on 3rd and 11, when it's broken down, that's when you can go be a hero and go make something happen. Levis, I think, has some similar tendencies, but it's just a little bit more sort of reckless about it. He doesn't have Caleb Williams' kind of crazy athleticism and freakish ability to avoid tackles and, run around back there. Levis sort of wants to be John Elway at the goal line every play, and launch himself into that helicopter hit from defensive players. And okay, Levis is a pretty big guy, pretty solidly built quarterback, but we don't need you exposing yourself to those hits every single game, right? Certainly not when the game is not on the line. It's not a do or die situation. We just need to calm Will Levis down. Again, get him to understand when it's do or die, when it's time, when it's okay to just take a bad play, right? It's a play that's going badly. Don't make it worse by either making a big mistake or getting yourself hurt in the process and, making the entire situation worse by having to turn to the backup. So I think both guys have a tendency to just want to do too much right now, and that's their biggest flaw.
Hey, Sam, I'm still getting used to watching Derrick Henry in the black and purple. Kind of gives me shades of Steve McNair, ending your career someplace other than the place that you should have. But that does usher in a new era of running the football here in Tennessee. Give us your thoughts about how the backfield was managed. And, the most explosive play that the Titans had was from Tony Pollard for 26 yards. So give just your thoughts about the backfield and how they handled themselves in the game.
Yeah, Tony Pollard really, I thought, looked pretty good in this game. Had a couple of really nice plays. The explosiveness that he brings to the table was back and looked good. He outgained Tyjae Spears in terms of snaps. He had about 10 more snaps than Spears over the course of the game. And Pollard was the guy getting the majority of the carries, getting the majority of the work in the actual run game. I think, that I don't think that's necessarily by design. I think that's just a bit of sometimes that's the way the game goes, and whether it's game flow or hot hand, you end up feeding one guy over the other, and it looks like there's a sort of dramatically different role there. I don't know that that's the case. I think realistically they want to have this as kind of just a two-man backfield and split the workload reasonably easily or evenly. And Tyjae Spears certainly deserves that. He's too talented a running back, too talented a ball carrier to limit to just a third down role or just a pass catching role in this offense. So I think going forward, they're going to want to try and split that workload a little bit more evenly. But I think it's a good thing that Pollard looks back to being kind of the player he was in Dallas that got him a big money move.
Sam Monson is our guest on Twitter at Sam Monson NFL. Check out Check the Mic with Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson wherever you download podcasts, courtesy of the 33rd team. Sam, when you look at this New York Jets team and Aaron Rodgers bringing them to Nashville on a quick turnaround this weekend, what stood out about their offense from that loss to the 49ers? And how did Rodgers look specifically, doing a lot of the same things he's typically done, but not looking as mobile and clearly not as quick and able to throw off platform maybe as he was earlier in his career?
Yeah, I thought he still looked pretty good. He's definitely not physically where he used to be, and I think you're right. That's where it shows up, when he has to get on the move, when he has to make plays outside of structure. He was always fantastic at that, and maybe that's where he's lost a little step or a little explosiveness. But in terms of navigating the pocket, in terms of delivering throws, from a solid base, he still looks really good. His arm's still absolutely legit. He's still capable of getting the ball where it needs to go. So I think generally Rodgers looks pretty good. The Jets offense as a whole, I think the big takeaway coming out of that game was they don't have as many options as they need to. Like, that offense is Garrett Wilson, it's Breece Hall out of the backfield, and then it's not much else. I know Alan Lazard had a kind of breakout game statistically and got some scores late in the game, but Lazard is like their third option, and I don't think that's good enough for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. If the Jets want to win a championship, their second best receiving weapon can't be Alan Lazard. Or if it is, I think that's going to be a restriction on what they can do. That wasn't enough for the Packers when their primary receiver was Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers was at his peak. It's not going to be enough for the Jets when Rodgers is physically less than he was, and as good as Garrett Wilson is, I don't think he's as good as Devontae Adams was at his peak. So I think the Jets right now, they need to find some better threats within that offense, and particularly, from the young guys. They've got quite a lot of young receivers on that roster. They're just stacked behind guys like Lazard and Mike Williams and, the guys that they brought in. So I think they need to start experimenting, getting the ball to guys like Malachi Corley, to guys like Xavier Gibson, and just figure out some more options.
Sam Monson of the 33rd team joining us this morning. So, Sam, when you look at the Jets' performance defensively on Monday night, Is it more so the Niners offense was that good coming out of the gates, even minus McCaffrey, because obviously you saw it from a different guy there. But is it more so, I guess, the defense didn't do its job? And I'm saying that because they come in. I mean, we were worried about the defense in terms of the Jets, but are we maybe seeing them not be as good as we thought they were, or is this just the 49ers exposing them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to definitely make the kind of context of this is the 49ers. They're usually the Super Bowl sort of caliber team coming out of the NFC. They're one of the best teams in football. It's one of the best offenses in football. You know, Kyle Shanahan's system is great, particularly in the run game. It's tough a challenges you're going to have as a team in the NFL, but it was definitely disappointing and concerning from that Jets perspective that they weren't able to stop it, and they knew what was coming. You know, even on plays where they knew what the run was, they still couldn't get in the way and slow it down, and that was where a lot of those explosive pass plays came from. They were so focused on trying to stop this run game that was absolutely destroying them that suddenly Kyle Juszczyk is leaking through the offensive line, faking a lead block, and now he's catching you for a big play down the sideline. Multiple defensive players on that Jets team had very bad PFF run defense grades, and it showed up. Like, you watch the tape, these guys are just getting absolutely wrecked, particularly on the edge and not setting a hard edge. And that's the strength of a guy like Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end there. That's what he's good at. Like, he is a powerful defensive end that's supposed to be good at setting an edge. And the 49ers were just able to completely collapse that defense time after time. So, they've had some turnover on that side of the ball. The personnel maybe isn't as strong as it's been in the past. And certainly based off that first week, that's a concern that they're going to have to address going forward. But it's unlikely to be as difficult as it was against the 49ers.
Yeah.
Great stuff as always with Sam Monson of the 33rd Team. Follow him on Twitter at Sam Monson NFL and subscribe to Check the Mic with him and our good friend Steve Palazzolo wherever you download podcasts. Great stuff, Sam. Thank you.
Hey, Sam.
Anytime, guys. Take it easy.
Sam.
Yes, sir. Sam Monson with us this morning. I think giving us a little bit of positivity and perspective on the first half of the Titans' performance in Chicago. He mentioned setting the edge and what the Jets were able to do, or not able to do, I guess I should say, defensively against the 49ers. 71% of the runs outside the tackles for the Niners in that game, as far as the yards they were giving up. Maybe an opportunity for the Titans to give their left tackle a little bit of confidence. And, all right, Big Bear on the left side. J.C. Latham paved the way. We're going behind you.
Yeah, outside zone stuff. But you got to have speed to get to that edge. And the Titans do have that kind of speed.
They got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I thought it was curious, too, when he brought up he kind of expects them to even it out more in terms of Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard's carries. And that's something I'm curious to talk to them, Brian Callahan, about today when he talks to the media, because it was in favor of Tony, clearly. My big question with that is, if you even out, can you get one running back into a groove if you are kind of going back and forth?
I think what they're doing is using both backs to see which one of them does get into that rhythm.
Yeah.
Because if all of a sudden Tony Pollard's getting 5 yards of carry, they're not going to pull him out and put Tony in there just for the fact that I said I want to be balanced in his backfield. No, they're going to ride the hot hand until it's not hot anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and Pollard was the hot hand.
He was.
In that first half as well. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Coming up, Bill Belichick has weighed in on Will Levis. Don't know if you guys heard this from the Pat McAfee show yesterday. Some tough love from a coach who knows all about giving his players a little bit of tough love. We'll play you that audio next.
I love living in Middle Tennessee. We've got great restaurants, entertainment, sports, and one of the nation's top Ford dealers right here in our backyard. Two Rivers Ford. Remember that name. Two Rivers has been a staple in our community since 1983. They're locally owned. They have a non-commissioned sales team, and they sell below MSRP. They've been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
Wrapping up hour 3 this morning on RKW. Ramon, Kayla, and Will with Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, despite what the YouTube chat thinks.
Oh, my goodness.
Unbelievable.
And I'm Don Davenport.
Yeah. Hey, Don. What's going on?
Yeah,
Right.
alongside Ramon
What's up,
Foster
Ramon?
and Don Davenport, I'm Will Bowling. 615-737-1045 is our number. No, if anyone's seen me do anything athletic, they know I'm not Will Levis.
I would love to see you throw a football, Will. That'll tell me a lot about you.
Yeah.
Do we have a backyard here? No, we got a back parking lot. Let's go.
I'm not going to chase you anywhere, because you outrun
Right,
me.
yeah, then you feel the pressure. Then we're not going to probably throw a good ball.
Once you add
Feeling the
hands and
pressure.
eyes together is when my skills start to deteriorate a little bit. I know how to turn left and occasionally right.
Goodness.
That's funny.
Bill Belichick weighed in on Will Levis this week. Weekly appearance on the Pat McAfee show, and the former Patriots head coach did not hold back.
Have to lose yardage, and then if you can make a play, but don't make a play, make a bad play. So, that's the one that always got me when the players said, well, I was trying to make a play. I was like, well, how about try to make a good one then? Make a bad play. So like the play that Levis had, where he gets out of the pocket, he flips the ball, underhand, backhand, whatever it was, and that's just, even if you hit it, what do you really have? Not much. And then if you don't hit it, then, you lose the game. So it's just, there's no upside to that play. There's only downside. And, it's just, that's just a terrible decision. And Tom and I have talked a million times about, if you complete this pass, what's the upside? You gain 1 yard, you gain 2 yards. All right, you guys are going to get tackled anyway. Like the play we just saw in Tennessee. I mean, what if he had completed that? What's the upside? 2 yards? What's the downside? Lose the game. Like that's you just can't make those kind of decisions. And even if that ball had been complete, there's no upside to it. And so, Tom did a great job of risk management and cut his losses. And so, rather than turn the ball over, all right, you lose a couple of yards and you get sacked, but at least we can gain our field position back by punting on third down.
Yeah.
That was Bill Belichick on the Pat McAfee show. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for the conversation on the sideline between Will Levis and Bryan Callahan before that drive, because Bryan said on Monday, we had the discussion. Just manage the game. Don't give it away. Our defense is playing lights out. Just the taking a sack, punting it away is not the worst thing. And Bill is articulating that conversation there that apparently happened on Monday. And I don't know if Levis was listening or not.
Yeah, but in that third quarter, he did that same flip-it pass. You know what I'm saying? So that was something that I don't know. It's easy to say, oh, he's going for that receiver that was in the area, right? But was he trying to maybe get the ball past the line of scrimmage and just kind of not create a sack by getting
Tyler
it out of his
Boyd
hands?
right there,
You see
yeah.
what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm there, but he didn't have enough on it to actually give it to him, and there was a guy standing in front of him regardless. If you're trying to maybe throw it out of bounds or at least get to the line of scrimmage so you don't consider it a sack or you're giving up a bad play like that, it's just an incompletion. But either way, it does come down to decision-making. And I think ultimately that's what got him in the pickle. When you had the improv, when he's drifting to his left and all of a sudden the pressure becomes more of an issue. He's now then trying to find guys that are trying to make themselves open and available. That broke down the play itself. And that's not where he's best designed, outside of the pocket, making things happen like this. Sure, he can run, but he's not going to be some guy that improvs and makes that a huge part of his game. So, we're poking fun at him. He's, of course, showing Will Levis as an example of what not to do, the great Bill Belichick. But I think these are some things, obviously, that Callie and Will be discussing this week and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Well, that's what's worrisome to me, because just like growing up, the amount of times my parents said, don't sneak out. And my bad instincts took over. And what did I do? I snuck out. And what happened? I got grounded for a week, right? At what point, that took me about 4 or 5 years to realize, I've got to grow up. Will Levis does not have the time to get those bad instincts out of his system as a quarterback. He has to grow up now. And that is something we thought he had done over the past 3 months, even things that he said he had worked on with not, making those types of mistakes, having the team succeed in maybe some boring ways like it would have been in that second half, but they still would have won the game. And I think what worries me is when your coach has a conversation with you in that instance, when you're in game time and you go and you still make a boneheaded, those are his words, not mine, a a boneheaded play like he did, that worries me is how long is it going to shake that guy's head and get these bad instincts out of his play? And that's not the only thing that is a bad instinct. He takes hits still. And so much so that he was putting a heating pad on his back in that game. So I think those are the parts of his game that worry me a little, that you can't just shake him in a year or two. It might even be longer, and I don't know if he has that time.
Brad, the cliche we hear so much is that you make the biggest improvement between week 1 and week 2 as a team. Is that a legitimate cliche? Is that true?
It is very true, because you've now got to see your team at full strength going 100%. And you can then see what you need to adjust. It's almost like that first, it's not a trial run, because obviously week 1 does mean something. But when you see that first run down the track, you have an idea of what you need to adjust to make sure that your second time down the track is better than your first. So from week 1 to week 2, they discovered a lot about themselves and a lot that they need to work on. And covering those deficiencies might be the most effective thing, and then creating new wrinkles for the defense, and vice versa. The defense played extremely well. Okay, that's something that they can hang their hat on.
Oh, yeah.
On the road, they were disruptive. They made Caleb Williams' debut gross, because he didn't even throw for 100 yards. Mm-hmm. You know, he didn't throw an interception, but he didn't throw a touchdown either. And give credit to the defense for harassing him all day. With that kind of combination, you can win ball games. But they also still have to make sure that the pocket is manageable for Will Levis to not have to improv, because improving for him gets him into trouble. If he's not going north and south with the ball and then slides before the traffic gets there, east and west, get this guy murdered. Outside the pocket, he's not a good dude on the fly or throwing outside the hashes from the other side. You see what I'm saying? Without it causing an issue. So let's just keep him where he's most comfortable and give him something that he can provide. Like, the quick step hit stuff, you know, get it out of your hands quick and rhythm, you know, those rhythm routes and stuff like that. That's what gets him into the flow versus him sitting back there patting it, trying to figure out where to go with the ball.
And the laser he threw to Calvin Ridley on 3rd and long over the middle of the field was the perfect example of that.
Yes, because he knew where he was going with the football, and that and Calvin was open enough for him to get it to him. But how often did that happen?
Right. Coming up next, Rhett, Bryan of Titans Radio joins us for his weekly visit here on the show, joining us for the 4th and final hour. Rhett's perspective on Titans and Jets, what stood out in Chicago. We'll cover it all with the executive producer of Titans Radio coming up next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson, and this year FanDuel is giving you a chance to win big every Thursday night with FanDuel Squares. It is the same Super Bowl Squares game you've always known, only better. I love this game. That is because your numbers aren't just randomly assigned like you're used to. You get to pick them yourself. You can pick as many as you like. You'll get to see the odds beforehand, and you can bet on them live during game action. So what are you waiting for? Just visit FanDuel.com/Kayla and bet on Squares today. That's FanDuel.com/Kayla. Plus, If you are a new FanDuel customer, you can get $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Must remember, you got to be 21 years and older and present in Tennessee to bet. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline at 1-800-889-9789.
What's going on? 901. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers preparing Justin Fields to start versus Denver. Russell Wilson, quote, feels better today than he did over the weekend, Tomlin says, as they prioritize his participation in practice as they, quote, ponder his inclusion. 2 season-ending injuries reported yesterday. Derek Brown, the Pro Bowl linebacker in Carolina, suffered a season-ending knee injury in Sunday's loss to the Saints. And the Colts, promising young cornerback Juju Brents headed for injured reserve, also with a season-ending knee injury. But with the early injuries, there is hope that they will both be 100% for 2025. For the Titans roster, some news on that. Signed former 49ers receiver Tay Martin, who played at Oklahoma State, to the team's practice squad. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Fourth quarter and fourth hour of the show getting started on this splendid Wednesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Brad Hopkins is in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh. I'm Will Bowling. This is Ramon, Kayla, and Will. And Rhett Bryan is here for his weekly visit, previewing the upcoming Titans matchup, a home opener in Nissan Stadium this Sunday. Titans and Jets. Rhett, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. I miss Ramon, but I'm glad B-Hop's in here because I want to ask him a question just to start off with this, because 9/11, 23 years ago, right now. And if I'm not mistaken, that happened on y'all's day off on Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
What were you doing? What happened? I've always wanted to talk to you guys now that you have perspective all these years later of how crazy that was. And obviously no sports that weekend, everything postponed. That had to be surreal to say the least.
Do you remember Steve Burks?
Sure.
He was our
head of security.
Yep. And he had taken my kid's mom and I to the DMV to get our licenses because we were obviously switching over to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we were watching a television in the back room that they had there because I don't know why he made us go through the back door, but we did. We went in the back door and we were sitting in there watching this coverage. And we all thought, you want to hear something crazy? We were thinking that it was an accident, the first plane. Like, oh, my God, man, what in the heck? And then here comes number two, and you think, oh, my God, this is coordinated. And the one thing that stood out to me that I remember most was the day after that when they suspended the flight. And we're outside all the time. And we're used to seeing planes coming overhead. And the sky was so eerily quiet. That was the first thing I thought, oh, my God, why this?
You know what's weird? That is what's strange. So I was getting my license renewed. I was coming into work late at that point in the day. I'd already taken care of some business at the bank. My bank guy told me, yeah, they just hit the Pentagon. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I go to the driver's license station there at Murfreesboro Road and Donaldson Pike over by the airport. And their cameras are broken that day. I waited for a little while. I was like, well, I can't do anything about this. I got to go to work. I get in the car, and that's when I hear the first tower had fallen. I'm like, wow. But you're right. No air traffic for, I think,
like
3
4 or 5
days.
days. Yeah, 4 days.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're talking about, they say never forget. I won't ever forget.
I was just going to say, I think everybody probably has a story if they were old enough to remember. I think everybody can remember the vivid detail. I could remember what I was eating, oatmeal in front of, the TV at the dorm with my dorm mate. I mean, I could remember the details of it. That's how crazy it is to know that had that much of an impact forever.
Yeah.
Insane.
Didn't mean to bring the room down,
No.
but that's
but
something that needs to be.
it does.
It doesn't need to be forgotten because that changed everything. I mean, how we go through the airport, because when we used to ride with you guys on games, there was no TSA, there was no this, there's no that. We go to gate B4, Northwest Airlines at BNA.
Do you remember when we came back from Jacksonville after winning the AFC Championship? That moment would have never happened had the current security situation been as it was, because there was
the one Indianapolis was what you're referring.
Was that the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, where there was a sea of people at the airport.
There were 10,000 people in the airport.
10,000 people not connecting on a flight.
If the fire marshal was anywhere around, he would have shut that down.
Absolutely.
But it would never happen in present day.
Not even a bit. That's the difference. The difference was you could actually...
fans used to come to Gate B4 that knew and had heard that's where the Titans take off, because they had to deal with Northwest Airlines, and they would come and seek autographs from you guys
and they did.
at Gate B4.
I remember that. It's funny. I hadn't thought about that until you just mentioned it, the fact that fans could actually see us off at the gate.
They absolutely could.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
But yeah, that... Whoa.
Crazy. 23 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Good night.
Unbelievable.
Years.
I know. Yep. Rhett, Bryan in studio with us, previewing Titans and Jets this upcoming weekend. Taking a look back at Chicago, though, Rhett. We talked with Sam Monson of the 33rd team in Hour 3, and he liked a lot of what he saw in this game from the Titans, bar a couple of really bad Will Levis mistakes. I think that has been the prevailing thought, Rhett, for a lot of us as we have taken the emotion out of it, watched the game back, looked at the clips, analyzed what went right and what went wrong. I think the old adage of it's never as good as you think in a win and it's never as bad as you think in a loss really is true for this game. A couple of plays ruined an otherwise spectacular winning effort in Chicago on Sunday.
So I go back to, you can argue that the block punt was really where everything went haywire. But I go back to the end of the first half when DeAndre Carter has a 66-yard kickoff return. And that ends up being in their first 3 points. Because, listen, that place was dead on arrival. They were booing at halftime going into the tunnels at the locker room. And then they had a homecoming weekend for all the Bears. So there was like 100 former Bears players there and a lot of them Hall of Famers. They present Steve Mongo McMichael's family with his Hall of Fame ring at halftime. It's homecoming week, basically. And so that just starts to build this energy. And then you come out in the second half, and all of a sudden they bottle up Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, and things get difficult. And then there's a couple of special teams problems. And then Will Levis does what Will Levis does. And everything kept building to this crescendo, and the crowd was electric at this point. Caleb Williams didn't have to do anything. When you earn 17 points on the road against a good Bears defense, and then you give it all back, you just look at the stat line. There's the one thing that tells the story is the 3 turnovers. That's it. Yeah. End of story. Because Denard Wilson's defense, they put on a smoke show. I mean, think about this. In the 104-year history of the NFL, the Chicago Bears are the first team in over a century of play to trail by 17 points or more, come back and win that ball game and have less than 150 yards total offense. It's never happened before Sunday.
And it had nothing to do with their offense, though.
No.
It had to do completely with them taking advantage of turnovers.
Bingo. Yeah. Think about the defense. All the defense gave up was 2 points on the 2-point play.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Ifs and buts were candy and nuts. But I'm going to tell you this.
Merry Christmas.
You take away that special teams gaff, and, of course, the flip pick six.
Yeah.
Well, think about
Titans
this.
win easily.
That's why I go back to the 66-yard kickoff return. Let's say that doesn't happen. You force them 3 and out, and you go up, and let's just say Nick Folk puts another field goal in, and it's 20-0 halftime. It's done. It's over. All you've got to do is just play into the last 30 minutes. That was where the axis started to tilt a little bit.
And Rhett, too, I think it's interesting. Brian Callahan on the Brian Callahan Show, Monday, Titans Radio, 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Every Monday during the season.
On your flagship home.
That's right. Mentioned the fact that he has seen quarterback issues and mistakes for young guys like this before. And I thought it was interesting, the parallel he drew on the show Monday between Will Levis and Joe Burrow, and said early in Joe Burrow's career, I had to teach him, if you want to help your team, the best way to do that is by being available for every game your team plays and protecting your body. And I think that is where Titans fans can take maybe an ounce of comfort today, is that this is why they hired Brian Callahan, is to be able to be a quarterback whisperer in moments like this and change the instincts of your QB in the way that he has helped Joe Burrow in the past.
Look, it goes to that adage that Brad Hopkins has heard 1,000,000 times from coaches. You never go broke taking a profit. Take what they give you. Don't force the issue. And that's where Will Levis's game is somewhat like the guy they're going to see across from them in Aaron Rodgers, the riverboat gambler. And that type of mentality where you're flick of the wrist and that arm talent and all that. And look, I think if Will had to do it over, he would completely do it differently. And I think the most telling thing was that Brian Callahan said on Monday, he's like, hey, man, the defense was doing well enough. All we had to do was just, take the sack there, punt, keep trucking. And, but yeah, I guarantee you Will has kicked himself up and down both sides of I-40 trying to get this right. And it's just one of those things where, and he's right. Joe Burrow did a lot of those same kind of things, and he paid for it, man.
Yeah,
he got dinged up pretty quick. You got to protect a guy from himself at some point. And while not being overly critical, he said, what do? You just keep coaching it. You keep coaching it until you get the point home.
And he was not shy about his criticism of his quarterback either. On the show Monday and the press conference Monday, I mean, for all the people say, well, why isn't Brian Callahan ... I mean, they are addressing this strongly in those meeting rooms, and his tone on Monday was really fascinating to me, and just how blunt he was. Of like, no, this has got to get fixed.
Well, you could tell he was angry,
very
but
much
without raising his voice and pounding his fist on the podium. And that's where I think that's where the what I think a forward-thinking modern day coach is. And handling 53 different personalities on your team and your staff and all those things. Never too high, never too low, trying to find center.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into Titans and Jets when we come back, because Wednesday is our reset day.
Yes.
It's when NFL teams everywhere will go from film review to reviewing film of who is next. We will do that ourselves with Rhett Bryan coming up next.
It's Ramon Foster here for Wesley Mortgage. Man, I'll give you the website right now. I hadn't done it in a while, but it's whywesley.com. WHYWESLEY.com, man. And all of that starts with the owner, Chuck McDowell, who's a local Nashville native, man. He cares about this community and is proud to serve it. Chuck, he reinvests in the people and the place to make Nashville such a wonderful place. While other mortgage companies are downsizing, Chuck McDowell and the Wesley Mortgage team are rapidly expanding in Nashville, keeping people working in the career that they love, and they love to have you join their team. Chuck and the leadership team at Wesley Mortgage have a support system in place to help you succeed in the mortgage business, ensuring your loans close on time, making sure you get paid, giving you back the time to build your business, and bringing back the fun to the mortgage profession. While with unique networking opportunities with the Tennessee Titans and the Music City Grand Prix, they make closing deals and building relationships fun again. So if you're in the mortgage industry and you're just tired of the grind, tired of the pressure, and tired of micromanaging everything to make sure your clients get handled correctly, then you owe it to yourself to go to whywesley.com.
Wednesday morning continues on RKW. Ramon, Kayla, and Will with Brett Hopkins in for Ramon Foster. Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, Rhett Bryan in studio.
All right, little musical education right
Hit
here.
me.
This is Foreigner from Foreigner 4, early 80s. And they actually relaunched a man's career because of that sax solo right there.
Ooh.
That's
Wow.
Junior Walker of Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Yes. I love a sax
who had
solo.
been dormant until he said, whoever put all that together, I think it was Mick Jones, the founding member of Foreigner, said, we need him to play the sax solo. It relaunched his career. It's an amazing story. And go look up Junior Walker and the All-Stars. They were fantastic.
The amount of times that I will be in a public place and hear a song that Rhett has played me, and I'll be humming along to it. Like, what? Girlfriend's like, where'd you hear this? Rhett.
Yeah. And he gives you the history. You don't even just know
That's right.
the name of the song. You know the history of it.
Yeah.
SRB.
That's right. Rhett, the New York Jets are coming to town.
Jets, Jets.
The New Jersey
We hope they
Jets.
don't do that a lot.
New Jersey Jets.
Lord.
Coming to Nashville. When you look at this matchup, obviously we got a chance to scout them a bit more clearly and specifically in a standalone game on Monday night in San Francisco. Number one thing that stands out about them, the roster, and what makes them go is what?
Can I answer that multiple choice with some bullet
course you
points?
can.
Because here's where we're going. In observations, the biggest one, they could not stop the run. And Jordan Mason, Gallatin, Tennessee native Jordan Mason, 28 carries, 147. But as a team, they ran for almost 200 yards. Couldn't stop the run. The 2 turnovers were huge. They couldn't run the ball themselves. Breece Hall, 16 carries, 54 yards, 3.4 a carry there. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's still knocking off the rust, which that bothers me because I'm afraid the rust might come off on Sunday. But the big thing that stood out the most to me is the defensive line. 2 quarterback hits, 1 quarterback sack. What's missing? Hassan Reddick. They needed him back, and let's hope that continues through at least Sunday, and then we'll just move on because he can be a difference maker in that thing. And they miss him in that lineup. And that's not taking anything away from Quinnen Williams and those guys, because Quinnen Williams lines up all over that front, and you have to account for him. And obviously, they've got players all through the 3 tiers of it, and Sauce Gardner is, oh, good Lord, he's really, really good. But those were my takeaways from the Jets is they just, I think San Francisco is that good. And it showed a huge divide in a team that's supposed to be competing.
And they killed them on outside zone. They were able to get outside the numbers. And, Rhett, I think the thing that's interesting, you talk about Jermaine Johnson, third-year edge rusher out of Florida State. Sam Monson of 33rd team in Hour 3 mentioned the fact that as a bigger defensive end, Jermaine Johnson should be one of the better run-stopping edges in the NFL. Pro Football Focus said otherwise on Monday. He had a 35.5 run defense grade.
Yikes, that's like a Rotten Tomatoes score.
Specifically, exactly.
That's not
It's
good.
100th out of 103.
Yeah, it was not good in terms of run defense. So as good as Quinnen Williams is, and he was one of the best run-stopping defensive tackles in the NFL last season, he also has 37 career sacks in the middle of that defensive line. On the edges, without Hassan Reddick, you've got the former Iowa State Cyclone Will McDonald.
Yep.
On the outside, second-year guy, Solomon Thomas, the former number 3 overall pick, who's not had
From
the
the
career
49ers.
people expected.
That's right.
And another former 49er in Javon Kinlaw, who 49ers moved heaven and earth to trade for him when they got him originally out of the University of South Carolina. But it's setting the edge that was the issue. I think this sets up well for J.C. Latham because that is something he did very well in the game on Sunday. The pass blocking element of Latham's game hasn't quite rounded out, but Rhett, there's an advantage, I think, for the Titans to run outside behind their big tackles in this game.
Well, first of all, I brought up the rush that they allowed to the 49ers offense first because that gave me hope that maybe they don't have that fixed this week and the Titans could do something. But I also go back to something you said correctly earlier in the show, Kayla. And remember, get your zone podcast where you get them.
Yes.
They're there. But that is one of the telling things from Brian Callahan on Monday is that you could hear the regret in his voice that he did not use Tajay Spears a little more. And listen, it's his first game as head coach as far as the real deal live action. And I also understand that you're not worried about dividing up. He needs this carry and that guy. You end up getting beat trying to balance things out. but I think he also knows that Tajay is just as valuable an asset as Tony is. And it's great to see that Tony did what he did, but that he feels like they lost some opportunities there by not giving him some more touches. But yeah, I think that is a recipe for success. But, guys always make adjustments because, listen, the Jets are going to come in here angry just like the Titans are angry right now.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that you thought that Tony Pollard got bottled up, maybe as they made adjustments as the game went on.
They made adjustments at halftime,
right.
Clearly.
So is it at that point, do you think that Callie wished he'd have went more Tajay Spears just to see if whatever wrinkle that Tajay could bring was different than what Tony had in that first half?
It would be speculation, but I think that is a good theory to subscribe to. I think that, yeah. He didn't get that specific with it, but right. I think if you're thinking of that because so many things went awry in the second half, that could be what he was alluding to.
Now, my only pushback to what I just said there was it's not like they have plays that are specifically designed for either one of those two backs to run.
No, because they have the same type of skill set.
Exactly. So so in other words, why wouldn't whatever happened to Tony Pollard have the same kind of effect on Tajay Spears?
Maybe in their evaluation, each of them, even though they have similar skill sets, maybe each of them have different strengths in different areas of their craft. That's the only thing I could think of. And look, the other part of it too is, Will has got to connect to these receivers. There were some missed opportunities with the Calvin Ridley targets, and I think that will improve this week. Because here's the thing. You knew that from week one, these guys are like two Greco-Roman wrestlers going back and forth, kind of, figuring each other out and doing tests of strength. And that's why the first couple of drives for both teams didn't do much. And then all of a sudden it started working, right? And then it started building. And then, because the thing that Matt Eberflus and Titans players and coaches told us all last week, they want to establish the run and bottle the other guy's run game up, and they were able to do that effectively in the last two quarters of the ball game Sunday. But this is a huge game. I heard Sam Monson last hour talk about outside of Garrett Wilson,
I was just
there's not a ton of, like, Alan Lazard is a very serviceable receiver,
right?
and he's largely there because of who the quarterback is, and I'm not taking anything away from him. The guy had 2 touchdowns the other night.
Well, Garrett Wilson, and Garrett's his obviously his guy.
Yeah. But Alan Lazard is more of a 3 or of a 4. But yeah, Breece Hall bothers me more than Alan Lazard does. Breece Hall is a really good run. They've got, they've been bad for a long time, so they have accumulated some talent.
Right.
They have done that. On paper, they should have done much better than what they did the other night. But the 49ers, they're in Super Bowls a lot. They just have come up short.
And that's what worries you, is because I just feel like they know they underachieved as a defense as a whole. They know they're much better than that. But at the same time, you're looking at Garrett Wilson being the guy that he goes to. At least he finds him in the deep ball. And you look at the upgrade that they've made in terms of the corners here. I think that's going to be really interesting if you completely can take Garrett Wilson away.
And what you saw in 4 quarters against the Bears,
right.
And I know that Aaron Rodgers is much different from Caleb Williams in his first career game. But that was another takeaway I got from Brian Callahan, that he was a little surprised at how well the secondary did, knowing that L'Jarius Sneed and Chido Awuzie didn't play in the preseason. It didn't have a lot of practice reps together. But he also came back with the compliment that they're veteran pros. They've played a lot of football, seen a lot of things, and they just went out there and did their job. And so I think that's a place of comfort that those guys will come in and do that same job again against Garrett Wilson and company.
One more thing I was going to ask you about with special teams. Do Titans fans, and rightfully so, have a little bit of PTSD considering what happened to Stonehouse last year? And it was a very kind of similar, not exact same situation on Sunday where you see something like that happen, Stonehouse coming back for his first game, and you look at it as like everyone wants to put the blame on one thing. Is it Colt Anderson, especially? Is it, Jack Gibbons and missing assignment? I feel like are we a little bit worried that is issue, or was that just
I think we have
weird
to wait.
freak thing?
Yeah, I think we have to wait and see what happens this week before we pass a whole lot of judgment. But yeah, they have PTSD, and rightly so. It was his first game back after missing 9 months of his life, basically, in trying to play the game that he loves so well. And it's a culmination of things, So that'll be interesting to see how they clean that up.
Especially because they know you're going to try to exploit that again.
Yeah, and like I said, this Jets defense and special teams group, they've got some talent. There's no question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, but can this offense take advantage of kind of a limping secondary? Michael Carter, you think he's probably not going to be available? Maybe not. Questionable. Sauce Gardner left the game at some point dealing with something. He was getting bullied a little bit.
And that's why the injury report this afternoon will start to tell that. I mean, it may look vastly different from Wednesday afternoon to Friday.
But to take advantage of a secondary that might have some injury issues, routes have to be run deeper, to take advantage of explosive play potential.
Sure.
But does the offense have that kind of time to hold up to let those routes develop?
Yeah, because, again, Quinnen Williams is a problem. I mean, he is a real problem. And then, and I'm surprised that Jermaine Johnson didn't set the edge the way that he did, because I remember him coming out a couple of years ago. I mean, he's a long, big prospect.
Complete rusher.
He's a condor, man. I mean, he's got arms a mile long. But I'm going to tell you something else, too. And this is going to be interesting to me in the reverse battle of the trenches. The Jets went with veteran establishment in a couple of things. Obviously, they went with a veteran backup quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, who's played in a bunch of games, and not be in the same boat they were last year after what happened a year ago today, as a matter of fact, 4 plays
that's right.
to Aaron Rodgers. But they went with Tyron Smith at left tackle. They've got a little older pieces and parts in the offensive line. I'm interested to see what the Titans front four did, because let me tell you, I gave credit to the secondary. Those dudes played out of their minds. I mean, Sebastian Joseph Day was really good. Keandre Coburn making plays. And then let's work our way up. His protege, Tavondre Sweat, that dude played 38 snaps. He played almost 70% of the defensive snaps in this thing. And he was a problem. Okay, he didn't get a quarterback sack or whatever. That's not something that normally comes from that position. But he was disruptive as all get out. And then he drops back in coverage and bats a ball down. Like, that's a dancing bear that can do that at his size. And that, is a thing because people are still double and triple teaming Big Jeff. I'm very interested to see what that group does up front, because they can make Aaron Rodgers uncomfortable. The thing that you have to watch with Aaron Rodgers is exactly what he did the other night when they were trailing. He's a master of making you pay on a busted play with a penalty and a free play. He'll get you every time.
Sure.
Like he's got that innate thing in him, and he's such a wily veteran. But there's so many storylines in this thing. And it's not just what the Titans have to clean up, because they're looking at the same thing the Jets are themselves.
I think that's the really interesting thing, Rhett, is because I think you could make the argument this is the total opposite challenge of Caleb Williams. This is a wily veteran who's going to know where the pressure is coming from. That was some of the benefit of playing Caleb week 1. You've got an aggressive defense that is going to bring pressure from all areas, and Caleb wasn't able to pick up a lot of that pressure a lot of times and move the protection around to make sure he had a clean pocket. All of a sudden, he's scrambling, and physically, he gets out of the pocket. Off schedule, he could make some plays. He didn't in this game because the Titans did a really good job. Different in the way that Aaron Rodgers has seen every blitz package that anyone can throw against him. He's going to do a better job of diagnosing and adjusting the plays and the protection. But if you do get him, the escapability of Aaron Rodgers at 40, not what it was even when he was 35. And physically,
and freshly coming off a major injury.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Physically, if the Titans can get him a couple times and surprise him or challenge him to know where pressure is coming from, or just collapse the middle of the pocket with Tavondre Sweat, that's their recipe for success.
Yeah, and to your point, and I'm sorry to jump in.
No, you're good.
To your point, in the throws, because listen, Aaron Rodgers has forgotten more football than Caleb Williams would have in his, or anybody else in their first game out as a quarterback. Those throws that Caleb Williams missed on second and third down to guys like Keenan Allen and those when the pressure was coming, Aaron Rodgers ain't going to do that.
No.
Like he's can carve you up if you give him just a millisecond.
That's why you can't be too aggressive with an Aaron Rodgers. It had been easy for them to flush a young quarterback and then take advantage of him trying to improv outside the pocket, which is what they planned on. Sure, they wanted to keep him in the pocket. That's the most advantageous situation, but they knew with his athletic ability, he was going to escape. Aaron ain't going nowhere. And what he's going to do is more cerebral than physical. He's going to use his knowledge, not only in the offense that he's running, but also the defenses that he's seen over the years. They haven't reinvented that side of the football.
That's
he's
right.
seen so much football.
And he'll draw you off with a hard count,
Exactly.
or he'll get you so antsy, you got encroachment, and here's a free play, and there's Alan Lazard. Bye.
Now, the one thing that he has to contend with is Garrett Wilson. And when I mean contend with is, sure, he can use him as a weapon in this offense, but he also has to make sure that he gives him enough attention to not let him be a distraction. He even mentioned, I need to give the ball to Garrett more, because Garrett will be one of those guys that starts saying, what's up,
Where's
man?
the ball?
I'm the best guy out here. We're not necessarily clicking on all cylinders in this offense. Feed me the rock.
Right.
Put me in, Booby Miles. What did Booby Miles say? Coach, let me spin. Let me spin. Put Booby in.
He is a diva wide receiver.
Yeah.
That is very
But you're
true.
right. That's a tightrope. And, you know, that's an interesting point you bring up, Brad, because that is a tightrope act that he never had to contend with in Green Bay because they never spent a first-round pick on a doggone wide receiver in 20 years. Think
Facts.
about it. In the whole time he was there. So that's a wrinkle. You're right. Yeah. That's a big point.
It's so interesting. It's just funny the way the pressure manifests itself for this Jets team, because at 0-1, we talked about it earlier. The national perception is never kind of the Titans. Not like it matters, but I think there are a lot of people just assuming, the Jets will have a get-right game. They'll come back. They'll be 1-1. They'll face the Patriots. They'll get to 2-1. But I think similarly to Chicago, if you get up early on this team, the pressure really starts to build. Titans weren't able to finish the deal on Sunday, but the infighting, the Aaron Rodgers bickering, just the locker room vibe, a coach that's lost twice as many games as he's won, and Robert Saleh, I think a fast start has just got to be really, really important in this game. And that's, no crap, Will. Of course it is. But still, specifically.
I don't know. I don't know what the odds makers say. I don't keep up with all that. But I would say Robert Saleh is one of the odds-on favorites to be one of the first head coaches fired. Like, the seat is very warm because of what he has to deal with on a roster, at least on paper. No, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Should he blame Aaron for that? Should he blame Aaron for that? I mean, man, I pushed all my eggs in the basket when I bring you here. You keep my job.
He's the one that did it.
But it's Aaron Rodgers, Kayla. I mean,
I get it,
anybody would think that he's going to be different.
I get that.
Here's the thing that is we don't know until we see how this thing plays out is the intensity level, because the Titans and the Jets had the same problem. They lost to an NFC opponent in week 1. This one, they all count, they all matter, they're all important. This is an AFC game. You got to have this one. You got to have it. Yeah. This ain't okay. It's not a division game, but it's a conference game. You better notch the win.
Right.
And that's why I think it is more pressure on the Jets when it's all said and done, 100%, because, I mean, you've heard Aaron Rodgers say it. If we don't go all the way this year, that's a disappointment. Whereas I think the Titans are not rebuilding, but they're resetting in so many ways. And that there's going to be a little bit of growing pain in terms of that.
And this may be the wrong question to ask, as I know we're about to dip out and get some Wednesday motivation from Inky Johnson, but I just wonder at 40 years old and what he went through, and I know he's wanting to get back and prove right. I just wonder how quickly you can get him disinterested in the game of football, knowing that the light at the end of the tunnel is the pathway home, and that's it. You hang up the cleats.
He's got a Netflix thing coming out.
And there's
in the middle of football season.
And Ian O'Connor has a book that has been released that's on the New York Times bestseller list right now. We'll have Amy Wells has an interview with him in pregame this Sunday on Titans Radio. But because he's a polarizing figure in the NFL.
Sure.
But I just wonder because he didn't look disappointed Monday night as much as I thought he looked disinterested. But maybe I'm reading too much into the tea leaves.
Yeah,
something to follow.
Well, he's probably smoking them, so.
Kayla. Wow.
I mean, Ossawaga or whatever the heck that
Ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha killed me. That was great.
is. Killed the video.
Brian.
Kayla's got him out here in the West smoking peyote with somebody.
No, ashwagandha is legal. It's ayahuasca that is the
goodness.
illegal one.
He is a
Right.
Cali kid.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Rhett Bryan in studio with us on this Wednesday morning here in hour number 4. Rhett, thank you as always.
It is good to
Thank
be
you.
with you all. Have a great rest of your week.
Coming up, Inky Johnson, midweek motivation. We'll wrap up the show next. Wrapping up the show, Ramon, Kayla, and Will, RKW 104.5 The Zone. Sharon Moore has a new contract at Michigan this morning. Official. Was coaching without a contract first 2 weeks of the season. So no surprise there. I've got a show recommendation for the people. A limited series on Netflix that has just come out that I started watching yesterday. If my girlfriend is listening to this, she's going to be very upset that I started this without her because we had talked about watching it together. I just went ahead and watched the first two episodes yesterday. The Perfect Couple.
I finished it.
On Netflix. I knew that was coming.
How does it end?
Nope.
Is the finale good? You done started watching it without Peyton. You broke the first rule.
It came out Thursday. How have you already finished it?
Oh, man. I just do. I set my mind to it, and sometimes I probably stay up one night a little too late to do those things. But I will say I predicted it, who it was.
Okay, well, I don't want to hear any other details.
I'm not going to say
But
that.
it is very good. It's the girl from season 2 of White Lotus.
Yep.
Is a main character.
I can't believe Nicole Kidman dies.
Nicole Kidman is in it.
She does not.
Well, there's a spoiler. Okay.
No, well, you know she's not.
I don't know. I did not know that. I said I didn't want any more details.
Megan Fanny does live, though. She doesn't die.
Yeah, Keith Urban's wife is one of the main characters.
She lives right here in Nashville.
She does. That's
Nicole Kidman.
So anyway, I recommend it. New Amazon docuseries on LSU and NIL out today. Are you interested?
What is it again,
Netflix series on NIL?
Amazon series on LSU's NIL and all of the LSU stars that were there at the same time. I feel like I've lived it. I don't need to.
Yeah.
I don't need more details. I feel like I see enough Livy Dunn and Angel Reese without needing to know more about them. I know plenty about them as it is now.
I'm probably out on that one.
You don't want to know the behind the scenes?
No.
I think they get so much hype still to this day. We just know who they are.
They
right?
take us behind the scenes all the time on their own. They tell their own stories. Why do we? I feel like we have watered down sports documentaries a little too much. Like The Last Dance happened, and then now everybody wants to do The Last Dance about X, Y, or Z. The part of The Last Dance that made it so good was that is one of the most fascinating stories in U.S. sports in the modern era or in any era. Of Michael Jordan and all those stars. Like, I don't know. I just
but you wanted to know about the division. You wanted to know about what was going on in the locker room.
Right. It was a unique story that was just perfect.
Heck, you could do a series on the 93 Oilers.
Yeah.
With Buddy Ryan and Kevin Gilbride fighting each other on the sideline, that kind of stuff, because there's a backstory to us winning 11 straight games.
We've gotten into a habit now, making sports documentaries where I'm not learning anything new.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's just something that's happening with media in general. It's the same thing with stand-up comedians, with specials coming out, with shows coming out, with movies coming out. Everything is so tangible that we can just go rip through it, run through it, and it's also quicker for them to put it out. It's the same thing with video games. People put out unfinished video games. Like it's no longer about the how you meet the end. It's about the ends meet. You know
what? Paul Harvey started that back in the day. How did he call sign? He said, "And now you know the rest of the story." And that was the compelling part, the rest of the story. Not necessarily the story itself, because probably we were familiar with the story. But if you want to know how the story came to be, now you know the rest of the story, as he fills in some of those little morsels that we had no idea even existed.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's why I love these kind of series like Will was talking about. I know they're not sports, but I think they're so unique that you just are like, oh, this is something different. Let me watch it.
Because that is a book.
Yes, it is.
The Perfect Couple.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
It was good. Anybody who wants to watch it, I would say
I'm
it's
hooked.
pretty good.
I'm 2 episodes in. It is fantastic.
Yeah. Brad, get your wife to sit down and watch it with you.
I planned to watch one episode last night, but it's
Netflix is kind of back. They added the $1 million heist. Kevin Hart's in it. That's pretty good. I watched an episode of that with Cheyenne last night, and another new show that came in on there called Rebel Ridge, about a guy who's going to bail his brother out of jail, has $50,000. He's pulled over, and the police confiscate the money. And he tries to get that money back. The first episode was very good.
Yeah, that looks really good. Also, if you like real estate drama, Selling Sunset is back for another season.
Real estate drama. Is that what you just said?
That is one of the worst.
I just love looking at the houses, man. I'm like, one
you
day.
and Cheyenne are in on the same thing.
I do like Property Brothers. I do like Property Brothers.
0 stars.
This is women. All women
I'm just
doing
saying,
it.
She,
Zero stars.
she
Yeah.
also has me watching. Have you watched Sister Wives yet?
Sister
Oh,
Wives.
like
my
the Mormon
God.
wives.
So
one.
much drama. So much drama.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just good on the Jen and Devin drama in The Bachelorette. That's all the tea that I need right now. Crazy stuff. I do like the
You
Bachelor
can't convince
universe.
me. You can't
I will
convince me it's
skip
real.
the Golden Bachelorette though. I have no time for that.
There's no way in the world that you can, on national television, fall in love with somebody
Well,
on
now,
cue.
not nowadays.
I never
It's-
said you could.
I'm just saying.
It
You
used
watching
to
that
be
stuff?
kind of real.
Oh, yeah.
Now people just go on it for attention.
It's entertaining. They always have. It just I don't know.
Now it's worse than ever.
Lincoln Lawyer back October 17th as well. Looking forward
Look
to
at
that.
that.
That is the show. Brad, good to see you.
Thank you.
We will see you again
See you
Friday.
Friday.
Back in for Ramon. Ramon
You
back in tomorrow
Friday.
morning. We will have Coach Mack. We will have Ian Eagle, who is on the call for Titans and Jets this weekend, as well as the Thursday 3. And right now, we've got Inky Johnson, a little bit of midweek motivation to get you through your Wednesday morning.